Picture a silence so absolute it has stretched unbroken across the eons, waiting patiently for a spark of conscious intent in the dark. Suddenly, this eternal quiet is interrupted by the elegant choreography of mirrored polymer, catching the first rays of an alien dawn. Colossal silver sails, spanning distances larger than terrestrial continents, slowly stretch their reflective surfaces to capture the fading light of a distant, weak star. Imagine the invisible, violent roar of cosmic radiation, a relentless stellar wind that has ruthlessly scoured this barren rock since its fiery birth. Deep within the shattered equator, a new and entirely artificial heart begins to beat, humming with the terrifying contained power of superconducting rings. This newly woven magnetic shield parts the deadly storms like a river flowing around a stone, painting the harsh heavens with the soft, ethereal glow of a manufactured aurora. Surprisingly, amidst the staggering triumph of new oceans and towering synthetic forests, a quiet shadow of moral hesitation remains anchored to the bedrock. If we were to look closer at the sheer scale of this planetary transformation, we would hear a profound, persistent whisper of philosophical doubt. It asks whether humanity truly possesses the cosmic, inherent right to erase the pristine, ancient geology of a silent sphere simply to cultivate our own biological reflection. This quiet room around you, however, demands none of those monumental decisions or staggering centuries-long engineering efforts. You're completely safe, tethered softly to the comfortable warm expanse of your bed, while the epic storms of creation are safely contained within your mind. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep, cosmic gifts offered freely as your physical body surrenders to the heavy, peaceful rhythm of profound rest. The boundary between your resting consciousness and the cold vacuum of the solar system begins to blur into a soft, inviting twilight. Every slow, measured exhale pushes you further from the lingering concerns of the waking day, carrying your awareness outward toward the edge of the atmosphere. We begin our grand ascent far above the dusty plains, where the first miraculous step of this multi-generational dream is already quietly taking shape. High above the frozen expanse of a dormant world, massive sails of reflective polymer unfold against the absolute black of space. These giant orbital mirrors are meticulously positioned to catch the distant weak rays of the sun and funnel them directly onto the planetary poles. As the concentrated beams of stellar energy strike the ancient ice caps, a profound and unstoppable transformation begins to take hold. Beneath the surface, the sudden influx of heat penetrates layers of regolith, untouched by warmth for billions of years. A chorus of microscopic fractures announces the awakening of the crust, followed by the delicate crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers. The ice, previously locked in an eternal state of rigid silence, begins to weep drops of liquid water into the dusty darkness below. Slowly, the relentless gaze of the orbital mirrors forces the frozen carbon dioxide to sublime into the thin atmosphere. This initial release of gas acts as a gentle, invisible blanket, capturing even more of the redirected sunlight. The grand mechanism of planetary rebirth has been set into motion by a constellation of artificial suns. Deep within the crust, vast networks of ancient aquifers lie dormant, their twisting channels preserved like fossilized veins in the stone. These subterranean rivers once roared with life during the chaotic primordial youth of the planet, only to be paralyzed when the core cooled and the atmosphere bled away into the void. Now, as the planetary temperature slowly rises, a profound thaw creeps deeper into the bedrock. The silence of the subterranean world is broken by a subtle shifting of pressure, building in the lightless caverns. As the ambient warmth permeates the deep crustal fractures, the ice loses its structural grip, preceded by the crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers. What begins as a hesitant seep soon gathers momentum, carving fresh paths through the dust of ages. Eventually, the subterranean pressure mounts as the aquifers gorge themselves on the newly liberated meltwater. The rushing currents scour the ancient sediment, absorbing long-dormant minerals and salts that will be vital for future biospheres. A hidden hydrosphere flows once more, waiting for the day it will erupt onto the surface and greet the alien sky. If we were to look closer at the gleaming polar expanses, we would notice a calculated flaw introduced into their pristine geometry. Fleets of atmospheric drones disperse continuous clouds of dark, carbon-rich dust, allowing it to settle softly across the endless plains of snow and frozen gas. This simple act of planetary graffiti significantly accelerates the absorption of solar heat by drastically altering the surface reflectivity. The stark white snow, which once deflected the sun's meagre offerings back into the cold void, is now cloaked in a shroud that drinks in the warmth. Beneath this dusting of soot, the frozen landscape undergoes a violent structural collapse on a microscopic scale. The steady crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers echo the broader surface thaw as the ice is tricked into yielding its rigid form. Gradually, the darkened patches expand and merge, creating sprawling zones of thermal vulnerability across the planetary caps. Pockets of liquid slush begin to pool in the shallow depressions, bubbling gently as the underlying trapped gases escape. By painting the world black, the engineers coax the sleeping giant of an atmosphere out of its icy prison. Scattered across the desolate, rust-coloured equator, autonomous factories stand like silent monoliths against the howling wind. These immense, automated processors tirelessly inhale the thin, toxic air and churn out highly potent greenhouse gases, belching them continuously into the stratosphere. Constructed by robotic advance teams decades before the first human footprint, they are the untiring engines of a synthetic climate shift. The heavy manufactured molecules of perfluorocarbons act as a transparent thermal trap, capturing the infrared radiation radiating from the warming crust. As this artificial blanket thickens, it holds the heat closer to the ground, triggering a cascading sequence of geological awakenings. Far below the rumbling factories, the rising temperatures initiate the crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers hidden deep in the bedrock. With every passing year, the atmospheric pressure nudges upward, softening the harsh contrast between the blazing day and the freezing night. The factories demand no rest, their metallic hearts powered by geothermal vents and small nuclear cores, dedicated entirely to thickening the sky. This engineered breath transforms a vacuum of despair into a cradle of potential. It takes an immense amount of focused energy to vaporize the vast deposits of dry ice that crown a frozen planet. Millions of tons of solid carbon dioxide must be subjected to intense, sustained heat before they surrender their trapped gaseous bounty into the sky. This thermal assault is a brutal, necessary phase of planetary engineering, violently shifting the equilibrium of a dead world. As the targeted energy beams strike the polar caps, the dry ice does not melt into pools, but violently sublimes directly into a turbulent fog. The resulting atmospheric shockwaves send violent winds tearing across the rocky plains, carrying the newly liberated carbon dioxide to the equator. Amidst this surface chaos, the deep thermal shockwaves penetrate the ground, coaxing forth the delicate crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers. The released carbon dioxide immediately begins to exert its greenhouse effect, insulating the newly exposed terrain and preventing the warmth from escaping back into space. Every ton of vaporized ice adds a fraction of a millibar to the atmospheric pressure, slowly building a shield against the lethal cosmic rays. The violent transformation of the poles becomes the very foundation of a breathable future. Surprisingly, the universe offers a bounty of wandering comets that can be snared and redirected to deliver fresh water to barren worlds. These massive, dirty snowballs of the cosmos are gently nudged from their ancient orbits by autonomous tug ships, sent on a calculated collision course with the target planet. Their arrival is heralded by streaks of brilliant burning light as they punch through the nascent, thickening atmosphere. Upon impact, the cometary bodies shatter in a catastrophic display of energy, instantly vaporizing billions of gallons of pristine water and exotic organic compounds. The resulting steam clouds envelop the hemisphere, eventually cooling to fall as the very first drops of alien rain upon the parched regolith. Deep beneath the impact craters, the seismic shockwaves generate immense heat, accelerating the crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers. This violent celestial delivery system bypasses millennia of slow chemical evolution, instantly seeding the planet with the basic building blocks of life. The imported water seeps into the shattered crust, mixing with indigenous minerals to form the primordial soup of a new biosphere. Through calculated orbital mechanics, the heavens are harvested to quench the thirst of a newly awakened world. A single, well-placed asteroid impact possesses enough raw thermal energy to violently alter a local climate for decades. Engineers identify carbonaceous chondrites rich in volatiles and carefully perturb their trajectories, guiding them like colossal kinetic torpedoes towards specific, ice-rich planetary basins. The resulting kinetic transfer is a brutal display of controlled chaos, designed to shock the planetary system out of its deep freeze. The moment of impact liquefies the bedrock and throws millions of tons of pulverized rock and trapped gases high into the stratosphere. This localized inferno instantly melts surrounding permafrost, creating temporary boiling lakes in the immediate vicinity of the newly formed crater. As the heat diffuses downward through the shattered strata, it joins the creeping planet-wide thaw, enhancing the crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers. The dust suspended in the atmosphere initially cools the surface, but the massive release of subterranean greenhouse gases soon overpowers this effect, leading to a sustained, aggressive warming trend. These calculated strikes are the heavy artillery of planetary engineering, reshaping the topography while injecting vital heat into the core. A dead world is quite literally hammered into submission by the rocks of its own solar system. Picture a network of subterranean heating elements, drilled kilometers deep into the crust, pulsing with quiet, sustained nuclear fire. These extensive thermal grids are designed to create localized pockets of warmth, acting as incubators for the first strains of engineered microbial life. By warming the planet from the inside out, engineers bypass the immediate hostility of the surface environment, fostering a hidden genesis. The gentle, radiating heat slowly thaws the surrounding permafrost, turning the rigid, frozen dirt into a damp, nutrient-rich slurry. It is within these dark, pressurized mud pockets that the first biological pioneers begin their silent work of metabolizing toxic chemistry into useful gases. Above them, in the cavernous hollows of the crust, the quiet crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers provide a steady supply of liquid water. These subterranean oases slowly expand over the decades, merging their thermal footprints to create vast underground habitable zones. The microbes multiply endlessly, exhaling oxygen and nitrogen that slowly percolate upward through the porous rock to enrich the surface atmosphere. Life begins in the warm, artificial dark, waiting for the sky above to become hospitable. Changing the albedo of a planet remains one of the most passive yet elegantly effective ways to initiate planetary engineering. By simply darkening the surface, the world is forced to absorb a significantly higher percentage of the solar radiation that washes over it. This method requires minimal moving parts or complex machinery, relying instead on the fundamental physics of light and heat absorption. Vast swathes of genetically modified dark pigmented lichen are sprayed across the rocky equatorial deserts, thriving in the harsh radiation while painting the stones a deep, absorbing black. As these dark patches spread across the continents, the ambient temperature of the surface rocks begins to climb steadily. This gathered warmth conducts downward into the frozen earth, awakening the rhythmic crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers. The dark surface effectively turns the entire planetary crust into a massive thermal battery, storing daytime heat to fend off the bitter cold of the night. This gradual, insidious warming works in tandem with atmospheric thickening, trapping the absorbed heat before it can escape. The simple act of changing a world's colour becomes the catalyst for an entire atmospheric revolution. Slowly, the iconic red landscape of oxidized dust and barren rock turns a deep, muddy brown as primordial permafrost finally yields to an artificial spring. The ground itself seems to sigh as billions of tons of trapped ice lose their structural integrity, transforming the hard-packed regolith into a yielding, waterlogged mire. This transition marks the end of the sterile, frozen era and the messy, chaotic beginning of a planetary hydrological cycle. Streams of dark, sediment-heavy water begin to carve hesitant, twisting paths across plains that have not seen liquid in eons. The soundscape of the planet shifts from the howl of dry winds to the gurgling of fresh streams and the ever-present crackle and drip of melting subterranean glaciers. Sinkholes and mudslides reshape the local topography, erasing ancient meteor craters in a wave of slumping wet earth. This muddy, treacherous terrain is the fertile foundation upon which the first complex root systems will eventually anchor themselves. The water interacts with the iron-rich soil, beginning complex chemical weathering processes that will eventually produce true arable topsoil. Out of the cold, dead dust, a wet and yielding clay is born, ready to be sculpted by the hands of biology. As the cold, dead dust transforms into a wet and yielding clay sculpted by the hands of biology, the earliest, invisible architects arrive not in heavy metallic landing craft, but suspended perfectly within microscopic engineered spores. Cyanobacteria, ancient, relentless, and infinitely resilient, are methodically scattered across the damp, barren valleys by automated atmospheric drones to begin the monumental, unseen task of planetary atmospheric alchemy. These exquisitely simple organisms are the undisputed, tireless champions of converting harsh, carbon-heavy skies into a breathable, life-sustaining oxygen matrix. Drifting aimlessly on the thin, primitive currents of air, the dormant spores settle softly into the newly thawed mud, immediately awakening and drawing immense energy from the distant, pale sun. They aggressively feast upon the heavy carbon dioxide pressing down upon the surface, binding the inert carbon into their own rapidly expanding cellular colonies, while continuously exhaling precious volatile oxygen. This microscopic respiration is the very foundation of a nascent biosphere, a slow, deliberate breathing that begins to fundamentally alter the chemical composition of the entire world. Over the span of several decades, these invisible, interconnected mats of life spread across the newly formed continents like a living, breathing skin, colonizing every available puddle of liquid moisture. As they multiply into the trillions, their collective, continuous exhalation catches within the deep, rocky valleys, generating subtle pressure gradients that shift the stagnant air. This delicate biological stirring creates the very first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall, an invisible milestone in the awakening of a dormant sphere. Clinging stubbornly to the jagged, untouched obsidian monoliths that initially escaped the creeping thaw, strains of genetically modified lichen begin a slow, silent feast upon the bare rock. These brilliant composite organisms, a delicate and highly engineered marriage of terrestrial fungi and algae, are specifically designed to survive and flourish where absolutely no root systems can find purchase. They require no soil, drawing their minimal hydration directly from the thickening morning frost and feeding entirely on the sterile stone beneath them. As they slowly expand their colourful, crusty dominion over the boulders, the lichen secretes remarkably powerful organic acids that relentlessly dissolve the ancient hardened silicate structures, digesting the very bones of the planet. This deliberate microscopic erosion systematically breaks down the impenetrable, meteor-scarred crust into incredibly fine, mineral-rich granules, forming the absolute crucial foundation of rudimentary alien soil. The once smooth faces of the cliffs become pitted and porous, surrendering their rigid structural integrity to the soft, creeping advance of synthetic biology. As the atmospheric density gradually increases, the shifting air currents catch these newly liberated specks of digested rock, carrying them softly into the damp lowlands to mix with the accumulating clay. The first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall dislodges the finest grains, sweeping them into the waiting valleys below. By slowly dismantling the mountains, the lichen paves the way for deeper roots, turning an endless, terrifying expanse of sheer stone into a welcoming bed for future forests. If we were to look closer at the sprawling equatorial plains, we would realise that a bizarre, towering forest of an entirely different nature has already taken firm root in the bedrock. Vast fields of colossal synthetic trees, imposing structural monuments of woven carbon fibre and highly porous osmotic membrane, stand rigidly against the gathering dusty winds. Designed to mimic the broad, sweeping canopy of terrestrial oaks, these artificial sentinels cast long geometric shadows across the sterile landscape, waiting patiently for the sky to thicken. These towering artificial processes are specifically designed to scrub lethal industrial toxins, heavy metals, and lingering corrosive dust from the lower atmosphere at more than twice the speed of their biological counterparts. Their broad, mechanically actuated leaves act as incredibly fine molecular filters, actively trapping the lethal atmospheric remnants left over from the brutal, initial warming phases of planetary engineering. Deep inside their hollow, humming trunks, the captured atmospheric poisons are safely neutralized, compacted into completely inert solid blocks, and automatically buried deep within the crust. They hum with a deep, resonant and quiet efficiency, their vibrating metallic branches swaying deliberately to maximize their exposure to the changing atmospheric currents. The steady, rhythmic, mechanical breathing of these colossal scrubbers pulls immense volumes of air through their filtering canopies, artificially circulating the local atmosphere. This continuous manufactured inhalation generates the artificial precursor to the first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall. Allow your own breath to naturally match the slow, deliberate and patient pace of this planetary transformation. As you sink deeper into the quiet surface supporting you, feel the lingering tension seamlessly release from your shoulders, your neck and your jaw. Just as a new, protective atmosphere settles gently over a rocky world, let a profound sense of calm settle completely over your resting body. Strangely, the sudden, miraculous abundance of free oxygen presents a hidden, catastrophic danger, as a pure oxygen environment would be incredibly volatile and instantly lethal to any complex respiratory systems. To create a truly habitable, stable world, massive quantities of inert, unreactive nitrogen must be continuously imported or synthetically manufactured to fill the terrifying emptiness of the alien sky. This critical, stabilizing element acts as a necessary buffer gas, safely diluting the highly flammable oxygen to a comfortable, breathable mixture tailored specifically for fragile human lungs. Fleets of immense, automated atmospheric processors labour tirelessly to extract trapped nitrogen isotopes from trace minerals deep within the planetary crust, venting the purified gas directly into the stratosphere. Simultaneously, heavily shielded automated freighters continuously drop massive frozen payloads of solid nitrogen, harvested from distant frozen moons, allowing them to vaporize violently upon atmospheric entry. This relentless, dual-pronged approach slowly balances the atmospheric chemistry, taming the aggressive, oxidizing environment into a gentle, life-sustaining cradle. The deliberate introduction of this heavy, stabilizing gas fundamentally and permanently changes the physical density and barometric weight of the newly formed sky. As the thick nitrogen thoroughly mixes with the volatile oxygen, it creates complex, heavy pressure differentials that begin to drive entirely new weather patterns across the continents. This added mass gives distinct physical weight to the first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall. Standing on the muddy shoreline of a newly thawed, shallow sea, one would quickly realise that localised warmth alone is never enough to keep the precious waters from violently boiling away into the void. The overall atmospheric pressure on this newly terraformed sphere must be artificially forced to increase more than 100-fold, simply to allow the surface water to remain in a stable, liquid state. Without this incredibly heavy, invisible blanket of barometric pressure pressing down upon the surface, the newly liberated oceans would instantly sublimate, returning the world to a desiccated, sterile husk. The continuous aggressive injection of heavy gases from subterranean factories, cometary impacts and vast biological exhalations slowly weighs down the sky, pressing firmly and relentlessly against the rolling muddy waves. This mounting invisible pressure acts as a vital physical force, a crushing necessary embrace that permanently binds the volatile hydrosphere to the rocky lithosphere below. The water is forced to remain earthbound, pooling in the ancient craters and deep impact basins, safely insulated from the devastating vacuum of deep space. As the atmospheric column grows taller and vastly heavier, the movement of the air itself becomes a significant erosive force upon the jagged landscape. The thickening heavy air creates a palpable, noticeable resistance against the jagged stones, pushing the first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall with a newfound, heavy momentum. The sky is no longer an empty void, but a tangible, moving ocean of gas that shapes the world beneath it. Far beyond the newly formed, wispy clouds, invisible, silent sentinels stand eternal guard against the relentless, devastating fury of the local, hyperactive star. Colossal magnetic shield generators, positioned perfectly and precariously at the stable orbital Lagrange point, cast a massive protective dipole field across the entire vulnerable planet. This sheer triumph of magnetic engineering creates an artificial, invisible bubble that safely envelops the globe, mimicking the natural iron core magnetosphere of a thriving living Earth. Without this vast artificial umbrella, the highly charged, lethal solar wind would ruthlessly and systematically strip away the fragile new atmosphere, molecule by molecule, bleeding the precious sky back into the vacuum. The orbital generators hum with the terrifying contained power of captive fusion reactions, perfectly deflecting the deadly cosmic radiation and catastrophic solar flares safely around the vulnerable awakening globe. The harsh, sterilizing radiation is parted like water around a stone, leaving the delicate surface biology completely untouched by the cosmic storm. Beneath this invisible protective shield, the nascent chaotic climate is finally granted the absolute safety and necessary time to stabilize, mix, and naturally evolve without catastrophic stellar interference. The diverted, highly charged solar energy collides violently with the upper edges of the artificial magnetic field, creating brilliant high-altitude auroras that dance silently in the dark. These ethereal ribbons of light shimmer undisturbed, far above the delicate atmospheric currents that form the first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall. Notice how the quiet, steady rhythm of your own heart beats in perfect time with the slow, deliberate pulse of a world slowly coming alive. Let your awareness drift effortlessly away from the sharp edge of your thoughts, sinking comfortably into the quiet, welcoming embrace of the present moment. Your body is safely grounded, completely and utterly at rest, enveloped in a soft, invisible blanket of peaceful stillness. Out on the vast, shallow, mineral-rich seas that now completely cover the lower northern hemisphere, colossal, perfectly geometric structures bob gently on the rhythmic, newly formed tides. These sprawling, floating algae farms stretch continuously for hundreds of miles, meticulously cultivating engineered, hyperproductive phytoplankton in the warm, nutrient-dense, and sunlit surface waters. By intentionally moving the critical oxygenation process from the limited rocky landmasses to the expansive, unshadowed oceans, planetary engineers drastically and exponentially speed up the global atmospheric transition. The specialized algae thrive aggressively in the protected shallow waters, multiplying at an astonishing rate and releasing massive, continuous, visible plumes of pure oxygen bubbles into the air directly above the waves. Beneath the shimmering surface, the dying generations of algae constantly fall to the dark seabed, permanently sequestering unwanted carbon and laying the vital organic groundwork for complex marine ecosystems. The oceans slowly transform from sterile, muddy puddles into a thick, vibrant green soup of limitless biological potential. Above the gently rolling water, the oxygen-rich thermals created by the sprawling farms continuously rise high into the warming sky, generating massive, invisible columns of ascending, breathable air. These thermal updrafts travel across the vast oceans, eventually making landfall and joining the rising currents that become the first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall. The breath of the ocean successfully breathes life into the barren stones of the deepest continents. Surprisingly, as the distant sun slowly warms the newly formed expansive oceans, the resulting massive evaporation initiates an entirely natural, unguided, and incredibly powerful phase of planetary engineering. The sheer, staggering volume of invisible water vapour steadily rising into the upper stratosphere quickly begins to act as a profoundly potent, naturally occurring greenhouse gas. This vital, unintended consequence is significantly more effective at trapping solar radiation than the artificial perfluorocarbons manufactured during the initial brutal warming phases. This creates a relentless, unstoppable positive feedback loop, where the increasingly humid air traps significantly more heat, which in turn violently causes even more surface water to evaporate into the sky. The entire atmosphere rapidly becomes a heavy, saturated sponge, transferring vast amounts of thermal energy from the boiling equator to the still frozen poles via massive spiraling storm systems. The planetary climate system finally awakens, taking the reins of its own thermal destiny away from the machines. This roaring natural atmospheric engine eventually renders the initial terrestrial greenhouse factories completely obsolete, allowing the young planet to aggressively warm itself through its own immense meteorological momentum. The gathering dark storm clouds bring the promise of violent weather and torrential rains, eventually outgrowing the gentle first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall to become roaring planetary gales. The sky learns to speak with its own deafening thunder. Deep within the damp, yielding mud of the lowlands, a completely hidden, microscopic war is continuously fought against the toxic, chemical legacy of a dead, irradiated world. The native, undisturbed soil is heavily saturated with lethal perchlorets, highly reactive chemical salts that would instantly and permanently poison any complex terrestrial plant life attempting to take root. To surgically cleanse the dirt, absolute legions of carefully engineered specialized bacteria are seeded directly into the planetary crust by automated rovers. These microscopic, tireless janitors actually thrive on the toxic, salty environment, actively and aggressively metabolizing the lethal perchlorets to fuel their own rapid cellular division. Through complex engineered biological pathways, they systematically break down the poisonous compounds, converting them entirely into harmless inert chlorides and releasing even more precious breathable oxygen back into the dirt. They act as a living microscopic filtration system, slowly neutralizing the chemical hazards that have plagued the regolith for eons. Slowly, over countless generations, the harsh, toxic bite of the soil is completely neutralized, leaving behind a rich, safe, and highly fertile loam that is finally ready for the introduction of true agriculture. As the dirt fundamentally heals, the newly purified oxygen-rich air rising from the soil catches the first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall. The ground itself is finally safe enough to support the fragile incoming seeds of an entirely new biosphere. Feel the gentle, unwavering weight of gravity holding you securely and safely in place, demanding absolutely nothing from you in return for its support. As you inhale deeply, imagine drawing in a profound sense of clarity, and as you exhale, release any lingering, stubborn tension from the long day. You're currently resting in a quiet space of perfect equilibrium, completely safe, deeply comfortable, and entirely at peace. As the quiet decades seamlessly bleed into centuries, the most profound, undeniable evidence of planetary transformation is beautifully painted across the vast canvas of the alien sky itself. The high-altitude, rust-coloured dust finally settles to the ground, and the ever-increasing density of oxygen, nitrogen, and heavy water vapour begins to scatter the light of the sun in an entirely new way. The visual identity of the planet undergoes a slow, breathtaking metamorphosis that is visible even from the deepest, darkest craters of the surface. The hazy, depressing and dusty butterscotch hue that completely dominated the heavens for billions of years slowly and inevitably fades, replaced by a deep, resonant and incredibly profound optical shift. Rayleigh scattering finally takes firm hold of the newly thickened alien atmosphere, selectively filtering out the harsh reds and yellows while beautifully bending the shorter, brilliant wavelengths of incoming light. The sky essentially learns how to behave like a true, life-giving canopy, filtering the stars and softening the glare of the sun. One quiet morning, without any fanfare, the distant sun rises over the horizon to illuminate a vast sky that has finally transitioned into a pale, brilliant, and incredibly hopeful blue. A true, functional atmosphere now safely crowns the awakening world, carrying the first whisper of a newly engineered breeze against a canyon wall across the face of a living, breathing planet. The blue sky stands as the ultimate undeniable testament that the breath of a new world has finally been drawn. As the breath of a new world is finally drawn, this pale, hopeful blue sky looks down upon a landscape that has long forgotten the gentle touch of moisture. Yet, the planet itself remembers, a deep, topographical memory etched into the very bedrock by primordial floods that raged eons ago, before the atmosphere bled away into the void. These ancient riverbeds, sprawling networks of dendritic channels carved relentlessly by prehistoric torrents, provide natural, ready-made arteries for the very first returning streams. Now, as the slow, muddy trickle of an artificial spring gathers momentum, it naturally seeks out these ancient, dusty arroyos, guided effortlessly by the existing planetary geology. The dry, cracked clay at the bottom of these canyons eagerly absorbs the initial moisture, swelling and darkening as the long billion-year drought finally, miraculously breaks. Slowly, the hesitant seeps gather into flowing creeks, tracing the exact same winding, chaotic trajectories mapped out by their ancient, long-dead predecessors. Eventually, these reborn waterways swell into roaring, sediment-choked rivers that carve aggressively through the landscape, scouring the channels deeper with every passing season. The sound of rushing water echoes once again off the high canyon walls, a beautiful precursor to the gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years. The planet simply remembers how to bleed, allowing the liquid to flow along the deeply worn scars of its youth, guided by the ghosts of prehistoric rivers. Moving beyond the localized surface thaws of the equatorial regions, planetary engineers focus their immense, orbital thermal arrays on the vast, depressed plains of the northern hemisphere. Here, unlocking the staggering volume of deep subterranean ice deposits creates not just scattered lakes, but a singular, continuous ocean spanning half the globe. The sheer, terrifying scale of this engineered deluge radically alters the center of mass of the entire planet, causing subtle, profound shifts in its rotation. As the crust finally yields its frozen reserves, the liberated water pools in the lowest topographical basins slowly creeping up the sheer rocky slopes of ancient impact craters. This rising tide eventually breaches the highest crater rims, spilling over in colossal slow-motion waterfalls that flood adjacent lowlands in a matter of mere months. A continuous shimmering expanse of deep blue begins to dominate the planetary map, swallowing entire dust-blown deserts beneath its cold, heavy depths. This newly formed northern ocean acts as a massive thermal stabilizer for the chaotic developing climate system, its vast thermal mass resisting the wild temperature fluctuations of the early atmosphere. Its vast surface area constantly absorbs the daytime stellar radiation, moderating the extreme temperature swings that plague the surrounding barren land masses. Along its expanding margins, the gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years whispers the arrival of a truly maritime age, a profound shift in the destiny of a world. Deep within the most arid, elevated plateaus where natural surface thaws cannot possibly reach, colossal thermal boreholes are systematically driven kilometers straight down into the unyielding bedrock. These massive, heavily shielded cylinders act as artificial geysers, designed specifically to pump vital liquid water from the deepest, highly pressurized aquifers directly to the parched surface. Their continuous operation relies entirely on tapping into the residual geothermal heat of the planet's core, creating a continuous, forced upward flow of superheated liquid. Upon finally reaching the surface, the superheated, mineral-rich water erupts violently into the cold, thin air in spectacular, towering plumes of brilliant white steam. As this subterranean bounty rapidly cools and condenses, it creates immediate, localized flash floods that aggressively scour the surrounding dusty plains, carving new paths through the sterile rock. The heavy rushing water quickly forms spreading, temporary lakes that eventually sink into the porous rock, permanently raising the local water table and creating hidden reservoirs. These mechanical oases become critical staging grounds for further biological seeding in otherwise inaccessible mountainous regions, providing isolated havens of liquid moisture. The steady thrum of the subterranean pumps acts as a mechanical heartbeat, driving the steady, gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years. By forcefully dragging the hidden hydrosphere to the surface, the engineers ensure that no continent, no matter how elevated, is left entirely desolate. Allow the steady, rhythmic flow of this newly formed water to gently mirror the calm, effortless rise and fall of your own breathing. Feel the gentle, unwavering and supportive weight of the surface beneath you, grounding your body perfectly as your mind drifts across these vast alien oceans. You're entirely safe in this quiet space, anchored comfortably and securely, while a dead world learns to flow once more, completely insulated from the demands of the waking world. If we were to look closer at the sheer volume of liquid required to sustain a complex global biosphere, it becomes evident that indigenous ice alone is rarely sufficient. To adequately supplement the planet's natural limited reserves, pure water must be aggressively imported across the terrifying void from distant icy moons locked in the outer dark. This monumental effort represents a triumph of interplanetary logistics, moving literal oceans across the solar system in chunks of frozen, life-giving salvation. Massive, automated harvesting vessels carve colossal blocks of ancient, pristine ice from the fractured crusts of these distant satellites, carefully wrapping them in thermal shielding for the long journey inward. Nudged gently by powerful ion thrusters, these synthetic comets navigate the complex gravitational currents of the inner solar system before safely entering the target planet's orbit. They are then carefully guided into calculated atmospheric entry paths, designed to gradually ablate and disperse their precious moisture directly into the high-altitude jet streams. The dramatic arrival of this extraterrestrial water chemically enriches the native hydrosphere, introducing complex alien isotopes into the newly forming planetary water cycle. As this imported rain finally reaches the ground, it mingles seamlessly with the native meltwater, contributing to the gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years. The oceans of this new world are quite literally woven from the scattered, frozen remnants of the outer darkness, a cosmic amalgamation of ice and stone. Notice how the fundamental physics of a smaller, lower gravity world radically alter the very nature of a simple, everyday rainstorm. Without the crushing, heavy pull of a massive planetary core, the condensing water droplets in the upper atmosphere are able to accumulate significantly more mass before falling. Consequently, the raindrops plummeting toward the alien surface are spectacularly large, shimmering spheres of water, sometimes reaching the terrifying size of small stones. Furthermore, these oversized droplets fall at a markedly slower terminal velocity than terrestrial rain, drifting downward in a mesmerizing, almost dreamlike slow motion. When they finally strike the thirsty regolith, they do not violently shatter, but rather splat heavily, creating wide, dark craters in the fine, powdery dust. This gentle, heavy precipitation thoroughly soaks the ground without causing the aggressive, destructive topsoil runoff often seen in heavier gravity wells, preserving the fragile, newly formed dirt. The acoustics of this alien weather are profoundly different, lacking the sharp, hissing static of a terrestrial downpour in favour of a deep, resonant and rhythmic drumming against the stones. As these massive drops eventually accumulate in the lowlands, they feed the surging streams that ensure the gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years. The sky weeps in giant slow-motion tears, carefully nurturing the fragile soil below with a gentle, heavy hand. Creating a truly self-sustaining artificial water cycle requires far more than simply flooding the plains. It demands the meticulous establishment of complex, highly engineered evaporation and precipitation patterns. Atmospheric engineers utilize colossal orbital mirrors to selectively heat specific oceanic quadrants, forcefully driving massive columns of water vapor high into the stratosphere. Simultaneously, deliberately introduced atmospheric particulates are used to seed these artificial clouds, dictating exactly where and when the gathered moisture will finally fall as rain. By carefully controlling these thermal updrafts and high-altitude pressure systems, they can effectively steer massive, continent-spanning storm fronts toward the most arid, desperate regions of the globe. This invisible, meteorological infrastructure prevents the water from simply stagnating uselessly at the poles or evaporating endlessly over the barren equator, ensuring global distribution. The planet is crisscrossed by invisible, engineered atmospheric rivers, ferrying life-giving rain to the darkest, driest valleys with mathematical precision. Over time, these artificial patterns become deeply entrenched in the planetary climate, establishing reliable, seasonal monsoons that the nascent biology can depend upon for survival. The successful management of this vast atmospheric cycle guarantees a steady flow, leading to the continuous, gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years. The chaotic, untamed weather is carefully broken and harnessed, transforming random storms into a predictable, nurturing pulse that sustains the new biosphere. Carefully designed coastal topographies prioritize the creation of vast, incredibly shallow inland seas over deep, abyssal trenches whenever possible. Because the vast volume of water is spread thinly across a wide, flat basin, these engineered shallow seas warm up remarkably faster under the gaze of the distant sun. This rapid thermal absorption creates immense, sprawling stretches of balmy, sunlit water that are absolutely ideal for fostering early, fragile aquatic ecosystems. Sunlight effortlessly penetrates these shallow depths all the way to the muddy bottom, allowing engineered kelp forests and sprawling coral analogues to photosynthesize at maximum efficiency. The warm, circulating currents quickly distribute essential nutrients from the muddy floor, creating a rich, vibrant biological broth teeming with microscopic life. These protected, shallow basins become the crucial nurseries for the planet's developing marine biology, safely isolated from the colder, deeper oceans that dominate the hemisphere. Along the gently sloping edges of these warm seas, complex tidal pools form and evaporate daily, leaving behind vital, concentrated mineral salts necessary for complex chemistry. Here, the gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years slowly shapes the very first habitable beaches, creating a vital transition zone between land and sea. Within these sun-drenched shallow waters, the absolute explosion of aquatic life finally begins in earnest, preparing to eventually crawl onto the land. Before the arrival of the hydrosphere, the planetary landscape was a harsh, terrifying collection of jagged, shattered rocks and perfectly preserved, razor-sharp meteor craters. Now, the relentless mechanical action of coastal erosion begins the incredibly slow, methodical process of softening this violent, meteor-scarred topography into something recognizable as a living world. The continuous heavy friction of the water acts as a planetary grinding wheel, slowly wearing down the sharpest, most hostile edges of the continent over centuries. Powerful, wind-driven tides repeatedly smash against the brittle obsidian cliffs, undercutting the stone and causing massive, spectacular collapses into the churning surf below. Over centuries, these fallen boulders are tirelessly tumbled and ground against one another, eventually reducing mountains of hardened magma into vast, sweeping dunes of fine, dark sand. The coastline is in a state of constant, violent retreat, yielding its ancient territory to the newly crowned oceans in a slow war of attrition. This continuous, abrasive smoothing slowly transforms a terrifying, hostile wasteland into a familiar, rolling landscape of rounded hills and gentle, sweeping bays. The violent roar of the collapsing cliffs is eventually replaced by the gentle lapping of waves on a shore that has been dry for billions of years, a softer sound reflecting a softened world. Water, the ultimate cosmic sculptor, patiently carves the rough, jagged stone into a masterpiece of smooth, habitable geometry. Deep beneath the surface of the newly formed Northern Ocean, far beyond the reach of the sun, engineers look to the abyssal plains to spark a completely different kind of genesis. Dormant, underwater geothermal vents are deliberately stimulated with focused seismic charges, reopening the deep crustal fissures to the planet's molten mantle. These newly active smoking chimneys immediately begin to spew superheated mineral-rich fluid directly into the freezing, crushing darkness of the deep sea. The sudden influx of intense heat and rich chemical energy transforms these isolated vents into brilliant, thriving oases of extreme biological activity on an otherwise barren ocean floor. Specialized, highly resilient chemosynthetic bacteria are introduced into the scalding plumes, thriving entirely on the toxic hydrogen sulfide and completely bypassing the need for solar photosynthesis. These deep-sea microbes quickly form the base of a bizarre alien food web, supporting complex blind organisms that will never see the light of day. Feel the steady, calming warmth of your own body, a quiet, internal engine mirroring the hidden volcanic fires of those deep-sea vents. Let every breath draw you deeper into a state of profound, undisturbed rest, completely insulated from the demands and pressures of the waking world. You are suspended in perfect, comfortable stillness, anchored safely while the narrative of a new world unfolds in the darkness behind your eyes. High in the newly softened, eroded mountains, the continuous heavy rains finally saturate the high-altitude water tables, leading to a glorious, inevitable overflow. For the very first time in planetary history, a massive volume of fresh water crests the edge of a sheer, plunging canyon wall, plummeting an immense distance into the valley below. the deafening, triumphant sound of a cascading waterfall on another planet echoes wildly through the rocky gorges, silencing the howling wind with a roar of pure liquid energy. This roaring torrent of white water shatters on the rocks below, casting brilliant, shimmering rainbows through the heavy alien mist that rises into the new canopy. It is a stunning kinetic display of the planet's newly functioning hydrological cycle, a chaotic, beautiful symphony of gravity, moisture, and eroded stone that cannot be ignored. This is no longer a sterile, frozen desert, but a dynamic, deeply vibrant world capable of profound natural beauty and immense moving power. The moving power of the newly awakened hydrosphere eventually yields to a quieter, more stubborn force as the first biological pioneers begin their slow, inevitable conquest of the damp, rocky margins. These vanguard species are not yet towering trees or lush ferns, but incredibly hardy mosses and liverworts specifically engineered to withstand the brutal daily temperature swings of a world still finding its thermal balance. They cling to the wet stone and saturated silt with a desperate microscopic grip, thriving in the harsh, high UV conditions that would quickly wither any more complex terrestrial organism. In the soft, diffused light of an alien dawn, these resilient green carpets expand across the newly softened landscape, absorbing moisture directly from the humid air through their primitive, porous structures. They act as a living, protective skin for the raw planetary surface, shielding the delicate, newly thawed silt from the abrasive touch of the residual winds. Within their tiny, tangled mats, the earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil begins to permeate the atmosphere for the very first time after an artificial rain, a fragrance of awakening. Their simple, ancient physiology serves as the essential foundation for everything that is to follow, a humble but profound beginning to a global biological metamorphosis. As they photosynthesize, they release a steady, invisible stream of oxygen, while simultaneously trapping the fine mineral dust that will one day become true, fertile Earth. The oppressive, sterile silence of the rocky world is replaced by the soft, damp hush of growing things, marking the true birth of the green world. Deep within the vast, undulating plains of the equatorial regions, a new and vital structure begins to knit the loose, shifting ground together against the remaining fury of the planet's atmospheric tantrums. Engineered, deep-rooted grasses are systematically dispersed by automated seeding drones, their genetic code meticulously modified to strike deep into the regolith in search of stable subterranean moisture. These slender, resilient blades are essential for anchoring the newly formed, fragile topsoil, preventing it from being scoured away by the residual global dust storms that still occasionally darken the horizon with rust-coloured clouds. As these grasses spread, their massive interconnected root systems create an invisible, underground lattice that provides structural integrity to the once crumbling rock and wet, heavy clay. They act as a biological anchor, holding the planet's surface in place while the atmosphere above continues to thicken and stabilize into a predictable climate. Each individual blade of grass is a tiny living pillar, standing firm against the erosive power of the wind and the heavy rhythmic splatter of slow-motion rain. Surprisingly, these vast emerald meadows do more than just stabilize the Earth. They also serve as a massive planetary carbon sink, drawing greenhouse gases from the sky and locking them into the soil. The earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil rises in a thick, fragrant cloud after each artificial rain, signalling the birth of a fertile, resilient prairie where nothing but dust once lived. This emerald tide marks the successful transition from a world of shifting, sterile sands to a world of stable, living meadows that breathe in harmony with the sky. Surprisingly, the most important work of this green revolution takes place entirely out of sight, deep beneath the surface within the dark, damp crevices of the planetary crust. Specialized fungal networks are introduced into the raw regolith, where they rapidly weave themselves into a planet-spanning microscopic web of life that connects every living thing. These silent underground architects possess the unique chemical ability to break down the stubborn mineral bonds of the ancient rock, liberating vital nutrients like phosphorus and potassium that have been locked away for billions of years. These fungal filaments do not work alone. They form an intricate symbiotic partnership with the early plant life, trading their liberated minerals for the energy-rich sugars produced through photosynthesis. This subterranean marketplace allows the pioneer mosses and grasses to thrive in nutrient-poor environments, where they would otherwise perish under the harsh alien sun. The fungi act as a biological digestive system for the entire planet, converting sterile volcanic stone into a rich, life-sustaining medium that supports a growing complexity of life. This invisible collaboration is the true hidden engine of soil creation, turning the jagged, chemical-rich dirt into a healthy, integrated ecosystem that can sustain itself for centuries. As the fungal hyphae penetrate the soil, they create microscopic pathways for water and air to circulate, further enhancing the earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil after an artificial rain. The world below is now just as alive and active as the world above, providing the secret dark foundation for the great forests of the future. If we were to look closer at the microscopic composition of this developing Earth, we would find a teeming, unseen civilization of nitrogen-fixing bacteria being systematically sown into the damp dirt. These specialized microbes are the essential, non-negotiable precursors to any form of complex agriculture, as they possess the rare biological ability to pull inert nitrogen from the newly thickened atmosphere. They convert this unreachable gas into a form that plants can actually use, acting as the primary biological bridge between the empty sky and the living ground. These bacteria colonize the root nodules of the pioneer plants, creating tiny, efficient chemical factories that work around the clock to enrich the surrounding soil with life-giving nitrates. They act as a living, self-sustaining fertilizer, slowly building up the nutrient reserves of the landscape without the need for artificial industrial chemical injections. Their presence fundamentally changes the chemical signature of the ground, turning the toxic, sterile regolith into a rich, productive loam that is finally capable of supporting complex life. The earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil is sharpened by the tangy, ozone-like aroma of active nitrogen fixation that hangs in the air after an artificial rain. This chemical transformation is a slow, methodical process, but it is the absolute requirement for the eventual arrival of the first grains, fruits, and flowers. The soil is no longer just wet rock. It is a complex biological engine humming with the invisible promise of future harvests and a global abundance of life. Notice how the first forests to appear on this warming world bear a striking familiar resemblance to the hardy, wind-swept landscapes of Earth's own polar regions. Tundra plants from the high Arctic and Antarctic serve as the perfect evolutionary templates for the pioneer species being introduced to this harsh, emerging environment. These plants have spent millions of years mastering the art of survival in low light, high radiation, and extreme cold conditions, making them the ideal candidates for a world still emerging from its own billion-year winter. Dwarf willows, Arctic poppies, and resilient sedges are the first to dot the thawing hillsides, their low, creeping profiles protecting them from the still harsh surface winds that scour the plains. They are naturally adapted to the slow seasons of a world with a distant sun, capable of lying dormant for months and then bursting into life during the brief windows of warmth. Their inclusion ensures that the New World has a library of survival strategies already written into its genetic fabric, allowing life to flourish even in the face of uncertainty. As you let your awareness settle into this quiet, resilient landscape, feel the steady, unwavering strength of these small, stubborn plants as they pave the way for a more temperate future. The earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil after an artificial rain is often mingled with the faint, sweet perfume of these hardy northern blooms as they open to the pale sun. Just as these plants find their place in the New World, let your own body find a sense of perfect grounded rest, sinking into the quiet support of the moment. This biological structure of the forest is further anchored by a new breed of forest that begins to rise, featuring genetically engineered pines with needles so dark they appear almost black. These specialized conifers are designed to maximize their survival in the dim, low-light environment of a world far from the sun, where every single photon is a precious resource. Their obsidian-hued needles act as incredibly efficient solar collectors, absorbing the maximum possible amount of solar heat and light to fuel their steady, silent growth. This dark foliage does more than just power the individual trees. It also contributes to the overall warming of the planet by significantly lowering the surface albedo of the forested regions. As these dark forests spread across the northern hemisphere, they trap the sun's meagre warmth within their dense, heavy canopies, creating localized heat islands that protect the surrounding flora from sudden frosts. The trees themselves become active thermal regulators, participating in the ongoing engineering of the planetary climate from the ground up. The earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil after an artificial rain is complemented by the sharp, resinous aroma of these engineered pines, a scent that signifies the arrival of a mature, functioning forest. These dark sentinels stand as a testament to the power of biological design, turning the planet's distance from the sun into a sustainable, competitive advantage. Beneath their heavy branches, the air is still and warm, providing a sheltered haven for the next wave of biodiversity to take root in the shadows. Beyond the muddy lowlands, the fastest way to generate massive quantities of life-sustaining oxygen and establish a lush, green canopy is through the introduction of specialized, rapid-growth bamboo. These hollow, woody grasses grow with such astonishing speed that they can establish vast, dense forests in a fraction of the time required by traditional hardwoods. Their aggressive growth cycles allow them to rapidly colonize entire river valleys, turning muddy plains into towering, swaying walls of vibrant green in just a few short years of cultivation. Bamboo acts as a powerful, biological carbon scrubber, locking away immense amounts of atmospheric carbon dioxide within its dense, fibrous stalks as it reaches for the sky. As these forests mature, they create a complex, multi-layered environment that provides shelter and stability for a wide variety of secondary plant and animal species. Their expansive, interconnected underground rhizome systems further reinforce the soil, creating a living network that prevents erosion on even the steepest, most unstable canyon slopes. The sound of the wind through a bamboo grove is a new, melodic addition to the planetary soundscape, a rhythmic rustling that underscores the vitality of the new world. After an artificial rain, the earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil is heavy and sweet within the humid green shadows of the bamboo forest, signaling a world in bloom. These rapid growth ecosystems provide the immediate physical volume of biomass needed to make the planet truly feel like a living, breathing home for its new inhabitants. As you feel the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of your own breath, imagine the tiny, tireless movement of life stirring beneath the surface of this newly green world. Insects like earthworms and various specialized soil-dwelling beetles are eventually introduced to perform the critical task of aerating the heavy, damp ground that has been settled by the rain. These humble subterranean workers burrow through the layers of silt and clay, creating a vast network of tunnels that allow oxygen and water to reach the deepest roots of the forest. By consuming decaying plant matter and mineral dust, earthworms facilitate the completion of the nutrient cycle, converting waste into rich, fertile castings that nourish the entire biosphere. Their constant movement prevents the soil from becoming compacted and stagnant, ensuring that the ground remains a dynamic, living medium rather than a dead, heavy weight. They are the unsung engineers of the underground, working in a silent collective effort to maintain the health and vitality of the planet's new skin. The presence of these insects signals a profound milestone in the terraforming process. The transition from a collection of isolated species to a fully integrated, self-regulating ecosystem. The earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil after an artificial rain is the fragrant byproduct of this tireless subterranean labour, a scent of health and renewal. Your own body, resting in perfect, undisturbed stillness, is part of this same grand cycle of life, supported by the quiet, invisible work of a million tiny pioneers. High above the developing forests and the teeming life below, a silent silver sentinel drifts through the absolute blackness of orbit, acting as the ultimate safeguard for the planet's emerging life. A global seed vault, heavily shielded and perfectly preserved in the cold vacuum of space, ensures a steady, inexhaustible supply of biodiversity as the planetary climate continues its slow stabilization. This orbital library contains the genetic blueprints for millions of species from Earth, waiting for the precise moment when the environment below is ready for their introduction. The vault is more than just a storage facility. It is a dynamic, automated laboratory that can synthesize and disperse seeds to any region of the planet in response to local ecological needs. If a particular forest is damaged by a freak storm or an unexpected chemical imbalance, the vault can deploy a repair kit of specific pioneer species to restore the balance. It acts as a planetary memory, ensuring that the hard-won progress of decades of engineering is never lost to the unpredictable whims of a young and volatile climate. This cosmic insurance policy allows the engineers below to take calculated risks with the biosphere, knowing that the foundation of life is safely tucked away amongst the stars. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine this silent guardian watching over the greening world, a beacon of hope and continuity in the vast dark. The earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil after an artificial rain is a grounded reminder of the vibrant life that this orbital vault protects and provides. The final, delicate triumph of this long green journey is not found in the massive scale of the forests or the volume of the oxygen, but in the fragile bloom of the very first flower to open under an alien sun. This single, tiny event is a profound testament to decades of careful cultivation, a delicate splash of colour against the vast green and brown expanse of the newly terraformed world. It represents the successful synthesis of all the previous stages: the thawing of the ice, the thickening of the air, the sculpting of the water, and the seeding of the soil. When that first blossom finally unfurls its petals, it does so in a world that is now capable of supporting not just basic survival, but true ornamental beauty. The flower's scent, a complex and sweet perfume, mingles with the earthy scent of freshly manufactured topsoil after an artificial rain, creating a sensory signature that is unique to this new world. It is a biological declaration of victory, a sign that the planet has finally transitioned from an engineered project to a living, breathing and blooming home for all. As you surrender completely to the heavy, peaceful embrace of sleep, let the image of this first flower linger in your mind, a small, radiant symbol of life's incredible persistence and creativity. The moving power of the planetary machines has finally given way to the gentle, unstoppable power of a single bloom opening to the light. The journey of the green is complete, and a new world has finally beautifully found its voice in the silence of the cosmos. The voice of the cosmos is one of radiation and solar wind, a silent, scouring force that seeks to strip the life from any world that dares to breathe. For billions of years, this planet lacked the internal heart to generate its own protective shroud, leaving the surface exposed to the relentless bombardment of high-energy particles. Now, this cosmic silence is challenged by a planetary-scale engineering feat that serves as a surrogate for a missing iron core. Deep within the equatorial crust, massive superconducting rings have been woven into the bedrock, forming a subterranean halo that hums with incredible, contained power. These planetary-scale coils carry immense electrical currents, creating a global magnetic field that extends far into the vacuum of space. This structure acts as a magnetic dam, diverting the lethal streams of the solar wind and shielding the fragile new atmosphere from being bled away into the dark. As the solar particles collide with this artificial barrier, they are funneled toward the poles in a display of shimmering ethereal beauty. This is the soft glow of an artificial aurora as it ripples across the night sky, a vibrant neon ghost of violet and emerald light. This shimmering curtain is the visible proof of the planet's new safety, a magnetic promise that the sky above is finally, permanently protected. The newly blue sky, while beautiful, remains a blank canvas that must be meticulously managed to maintain the delicate thermal equilibrium of the world. Surprisingly, the introduction of artificial cloud seeding allows engineers to paint the heavens with reflective shields of water and ice. High-altitude drones disperse fine plumes of hygroscopic salts and silver iodide into the moist upper layers of the atmosphere, initiating the rapid condensation of vast white canopies. These engineered clouds serve a dual purpose, acting as a planetary sunscreen that reflects excess solar radiation back into the deep cold of space. By increasing the planet's albedo in specific sun-drenched regions, we can prevent the surface from overheating while the lower latitudes continue to absorb the warmth they need. This structure of white and grey provides a cooling shade that protects the emerging mosses and forests from the midday glare. Furthermore, the seeding process allows for the strategic distribution of life-giving rainfall to the most arid and elevated plateaus. By dictating exactly where these heavy clouds will break, we can ensure that every corner of the globe receives the hydration necessary for its own local genesis. The sky has become a controlled reservoir, a managed gift of moisture that ensures the green world continues to expand into the driest reaches of the continent. Beyond the clouds, the sky acts as a silent, invisible armour that protects the growing biosphere from a constant celestial bombardment. In the previous eras of thin air, every grain of cosmic dust and shard of rock could strike the surface with the force of a bullet, shattering the ground and shredding any hope of life. Now, the newly thickened atmosphere provides a dense fluid resistance that turns these incoming threats into harmless fleeting moments of light. As micrometeorites plunge into the upper atmosphere, the intense friction of the heavy air converts their kinetic energy into sudden brilliant heat. These tiny visitors burn up millions of miles before they can ever touch the newly populated surface, transforming a lethal rain into a peaceful display of shooting stars. The sky effectively consumes the debris of the solar system, recycling the minerals into fine microscopic dust that settles softly upon the forests. This dense atmospheric buffer ensures that the delicate structures of life, the flowers, the leaves, and the resting inhabitants, remain entirely undisturbed by the chaos of the void. If we were to look closer at the night sky, we would see a world that has finally found its peace under a protective veil. Take a moment to feel the absolute safety of your own surroundings, knowing that the air itself is a guardian, holding the dangers of space at bay while you rest in perfect stillness. The visual identity of a world is defined by the way it filters the light of its parent star, turning raw energy into a palette of emotional comfort. Surprisingly, the introduction of specific trace gases into the upper atmosphere allows engineers to sculpt the exact hue and intensity of the setting sun. By carefully balancing the concentration of aerosols and noble gases, the heavens are transformed from a sterile void into a masterpiece of orchestrated light. As the sun dips toward the horizon, the light travels through a longer path of this engineered atmosphere, where Rayleigh scattering is manipulated to favour a specific range of colours. The sky begins to glow with a deep, resonant gold that eventually bleeds into vibrant shades of violet and rose, colours designed to soothe the psychological needs of the new inhabitants. These hues are not random, they are a calculated gift, meant to provide a sense of home and familiarity on an alien landscape. The transition from the pale blue of day to the rich tapestries of dusk creates a profound sense of temporal rhythm, marking the end of the day's labour. Looking up into this engineered sunset, one feels the deep connection between the sky above and the soul below. The light lingers long after the sun has vanished, a soft, chromatic echo that promises the return of the dawn to a world that is finally, beautifully complete. One of the greatest threats to a young world is the formation of planet-wide dust storms that can choke the sky and freeze the surface for months at a time. To prevent these catastrophic events, a network of weather control satellites keeps a constant, vigilant watch over the shifting pressure gradients of the lower atmosphere. These orbital sentinels are equipped with high-energy microwave arrays that can beam focused heat directly into the heart of developing storm systems. By subtly heating localized air masses, the satellites can break the massive pressure differentials that fuel the most violent winds, effectively dissipating a potential global storm before it can gather strength. This structure of orbital intervention acts as a global peacemaker, ensuring that the winds remain a gentle, nurturing force rather than a destructive, abrasive scythe. The air is kept in a state of stable, predictable circulation, allowing the newly formed topsoil to remain securely anchored. The result is a climate that feels intentional and calm, a weather system that has been tamed by the wisdom of the machines. The heavy, dusty gales of the past are replaced by the soft, humid breezes that carry the scent of the forests across the plains. Notice how the silence of the room around you reflects this global calm, a stillness that allows your body to sink even deeper into the welcoming embrace of rest. The challenge of a world with high axial tilt or extreme solar distance is the tendency for the equator to overheat, while the poles remain locked in a stubborn glacial embrace. To solve this, stratospheric aerosols are temporarily deployed in high-altitude veils to create a selective thermal filter for the planet. These reflective particles are released in precise shimmering ribbons that hang in the upper sky, subtly deflecting sunlight away from the hottest regions. This engineering feat allows for the continued melting of the polar ice caps while preventing the tropical zones from becoming uninhabitable heat traps. It is a delicate planetary balancing act, a way of smoothing out the thermal extremes to create a more uniform and hospitable climate for a diverse range of species. The aerosols appear from the ground as a faint pearlescent haze, a silver lining that marks the careful stewardship of the atmosphere. As the planetary climate eventually stabilizes on its own, these artificial veils are allowed to slowly drift down and be absorbed by the soil, providing trace minerals to the growing biosphere. The sky eventually clears, leaving behind a perfectly tempered world that no longer requires the intervention of the silver mists. This transition represents the final handoff from the engineers to the planet itself, a world that has learned to breathe in its own thermal equilibrium. Surprisingly, the violent energy of a lightning storm serves as a vital biological engine that helps to nourish the ground from the heavens themselves. In the synthetic atmosphere, high-voltage electrical arcs crack through the heavy air with a frequency and intensity that would be terrifying if it were not so beneficial. These massive discharges of energy are capable of breaking the powerful, triple bonds of atmospheric nitrogen, a feat that usually requires the slow labour of bacteria. As the lightning cleaves through the sky, it fuses nitrogen and oxygen into nitrate molecules that dissolve instantly into the falling rain. This creates a natural liquid fertilizer that showers the forests and plains, providing an immediate and massive boost to the nutrient cycles of the young world. The thunder is not just a roar of power, but a signal of abundance, a mechanical heartbeat that delivers the building blocks of life to the waiting roots below. After the storm has passed, the air is thick with the sharp, clean scent of ozone and the heavy aroma of a world that has been freshly fed. Each strike of a lightning is a cosmic needle, sowing the riches of the sky into the fabric of the earth. Feel the deep, grounding rhythm of your own pulse, a steady and life-giving energy that connects you to the vast electrical cycles of the world around you. Reaching from the equatorial anchor point to the silent dark of the geostationary void, the space elevator stands as a monument to the bridge between worlds. This structure, a massive ribbon of woven carbon nanotubes, exerts a surprising influence on the upper atmospheric wind patterns simply through its immense physical presence. As the planet rotates, The tether acts as a permanent vertical obstruction that creates a subtle, planetary-scale wake in the high-altitude jet streams. This physical interference helps to break up the most aggressive circling winds of the upper atmosphere, preventing the formation of stagnant polar vortices that could trap the cold. The elevator serves as a literal spine for the atmosphere, providing a stationary point around which the global air currents must navigate and reorganize. It is a physical anchor that helps to stabilize the movement of the entire sky, smoothing out the flow of the planetary breath. Engineered weather patterns around the anchor site take advantage of these altered currents, creating localized zones of perpetual spring and gentle vertical updrafts. The sky around the tether is often filled with unique spiral cloud formations that follow the invisible contours of the structural wake. It is a visual reminder that even our most functional tools can become a part of the natural beauty and stability of the world they help to build. The density of the newly brewed air, combined with the lower gravity of a smaller world, creates a medium that is exceptionally favourable for the art of flight. If we were to look closer at the sky, we would see that the mechanics of aeronautics have been fundamentally rewritten for this new environment. Birds with wingspans that would be impossible on Earth can soar for weeks without ever flapping, suspended effortlessly in a sky that feels almost as thick as water. This dense atmosphere allows for the introduction of exotic engineered avian species that play a vital role in distributing seeds and pollinating the most distant forests. Even human inhabitants find that flight is a simple and natural part of life, utilizing personal gliders and wingsuits to navigate the vertical cities and canyon walls. The sky is no longer a barrier, but a vast three-dimensional playground that invites the movement of life into its highest reaches. The sound of wings cutting through the heavy air is a soft rhythmic thrum that fills the quiet valleys, a new music for a new world. The ease of movement in the sky reflects the newfound ease of life on the surface, a world where the heavy burdens of gravity and vacuum have finally been lifted. This fluid medium connects every mountain peak and every ocean shore, weaving the entire planet into a single, reachable home. As the day fades and the engineered sunset gives way to the deep velvet dark, looking up reveals one final subtle miracle of the terraforming journey. The stars, once sharp and static pinpricks of light in the airless void, now twinkle with a vibrant, living intensity through the distortion of the heavy, newly brewed atmosphere. This scintillation is caused by the refraction of light through the varied layers of gas, temperature, and moisture, a sign that the sky is now truly alive. The stars appear to dance and shift in hue, their light softened and scattered by the same veil that protects the world from the cold of space. This twinkling is a visual reminder of the thickness of the shield above, a rhythmic pulse of starlight that signals the presence of a healthy, functioning atmosphere. In the distance, the soft glow of an artificial aurora continues its slow neon dance, merging with the starlight to create a sky of profound and hypnotic beauty. This is the final view of a world that has been successfully born out of the silence, a place where the stars are no longer distant strangers but part of a living, breathing home. As the light of the universe reaches you through this protective veil, let your eyes close and your mind drift into the deep, quiet dark. You are home, you are safe, and the world above is watching over you in a shimmering celestial peace. The quest for a lasting celestial peace takes a radical, inverted turn as our focus shifts toward the brilliant incandescent morning star, where the logic of planetary engineering is turned completely on its head. Unlike the shivering frozen deserts of the Red Planet, which required a desperate hunt for every scrap of warmth, the terraforming of Venus presents a completely opposite and monumental challenge. Here, the primary struggle is not to ignite a biological fire, but to quench a planetary furnace that has raged with a suffocating lead-melting intensity for billions of years. This thermal battle requires a profound reversal of our previous strategies, demanding that we embrace the cold and the dark as our most valuable tools for survival. Instead of thickening the air to trap the light, we must work to dismantle an atmosphere so heavy it behaves like a crushing toxic ocean of gas. The journey toward a habitable world begins with the cooling hiss of sulphurous clouds neutralizing into an endless ocean of carbonated water, a sound that signals the beginning of a cooling era. As the planetary heat is slowly bled away into the void, the very character of the world begins to shift from a hellish inferno into a cooling, dormant giant. This process is slow, requiring a patience that spans centuries, but it is the essential first step in reclaiming a world lost to a runaway greenhouse effect. Every degree lost is a victory for the future, a quiet step toward the restoration of a world that once shared a similar fate with our own. This structure of cosmic proportions, a massive solar shade the size of a planetary disk, is positioned with surgical precision at the stable Lagrange point between the world and the sun. By casting a permanent cool shadow over the entire globe, we effectively halt the relentless influx of solar energy that has fueled the planet's atmospheric catastrophe since the dawn of the solar system. Deprived of its primary stellar fuel, the thick, suffocating atmosphere of carbon dioxide begins a slow and spectacular phase shift from a gas into a solid. High in the darkened stratosphere, a strange and beautiful weather pattern begins to emerge as the temperature drops below the freezing point of the heavy air. Massive, gentle flakes of dry ice begin to precipitate from the cooling clouds, falling in a silent, planetary-scale blizzard toward the scorched plains far below. This frozen carbon dioxide accumulates in vast white drifts across the basaltic highlands, physically removing the greenhouse gases from the sky and storing them as a solid, harmless crust. The removal of this gas triggers a rapid and profound drop in the overall atmospheric pressure, allowing the world to finally catch its breath. As the white drifts of dry ice grow deeper, they are eventually buried under layers of silicate dust to prevent them from sublimating when the shade is eventually adjusted. The sky begins to clear, revealing for the very first time the jagged, ancient features of a world that has been hidden behind a veil of acid and heat for an eternity. If we were to look closer at the swirling golden clouds high above the crushing surface, we would find a serene and temperate layer of the atmosphere that feels strangely like home. At this specific altitude, roughly 50 kilometers above the lead-melting plains, the atmospheric pressure and temperature are remarkably Earth-like, offering a rare sanctuary in a hostile system. Here, colossal cities stay aloft on nothing but buoyant, breathable air, drifting slowly like majestic, silent vessels across an endless ivory ocean of sulphurous mists. These floating habitats serve as the primary staging grounds for the entire terraforming effort, providing a safe and comfortable environment for the engineers who oversee the cooling of the planet. Residents of these cloud cities experience a gentle, rhythmic swaying as the structures navigate the high-altitude jet streams far above the crushing pressures of the surface. Life in the clouds is defined by the soft, diffused light of the hidden sun and the constant, reassuring hum of the buoyancy compensators that keep the cities at their stable, temperate height. Allow the image of these drifting sanctuaries to settle into your mind, mirroring the steady and effortless buoyancy of your own resting body as it sinks into the support of your surroundings. Just as these cities are held safely within the embrace of the atmosphere, feel yourself held securely in the quiet, peaceful stillness of the present moment. Your limbs are heavy, your mind is light, and the world below is slowly, patiently preparing for its own cooling transformation. Surprisingly, the key to transforming this toxic cauldron into a watery, life-giving cradle lies in a calculated and high-energy bombardment of refined hydrogen harvested from the gas giants. As the immense streams of gas collide with the dense, superheated carbon dioxide of the atmosphere, a profound and violent chemical reaction begins to ripple through the clouds. This celestial alchemy, known as the Bosch reaction, strips the oxygen from the air to create vast global oceans of water while precipitating pure graphite as a solid black byproduct. This process is accompanied by the cooling hiss of sulphurous clouds neutralizing into an endless ocean of carbonated water, a chemical song that echoes across the entire globe. The sulfuric acid, which once rained down as a corrosive mist, is systematically converted into harmless salts and water, clearing the way for a more hospitable chemistry. The result is a planet-wide downpour of warm carbonated rain that begins to fill the ancient scorched basins and volcanic craters with the first liquid the world has seen in millions of years. The graphite byproduct falls to the surface like a fine black snow, covering the volcanic plains in a layer of carbon that will eventually be buried or utilised for advanced construction. This massive sequestration of carbon permanently thins the atmosphere, reducing the greenhouse effect and allowing the surface to cool at an even faster rate. The world is quite literally being rebuilt from the molecules up, turning a toxic sky into the very water that will one day support a thriving biosphere. Deep within the upper stratosphere, the removal of the dense reflective sulfuric acid clouds marks a critical and final turning point in the planetary cooling process. For eons, these thick golden veils acted as a thermal trap, bouncing the sun's rays away while locking the intense surface heat inside an impenetrable, pressurized box. Once these clouds are neutralized and dispersed through chemical engineering, the intense trapped thermal energy of the surface is finally allowed to radiate out into the absolute cold of deep space. This massive thermal discharge is a silent, invisible eruption of energy that carries the ancient heat of the planet away into the void forever. The surface temperature, which once rivaled the interior of a furnace, begins a steady and irreversible plunge toward more temperate levels. As the heat escapes, the cooling hiss of sulphurous clouds neutralizing into an endless ocean of carbonated water grows louder, signaling the rapid condensation of the new atmosphere. The clearing of the skies reveals a universe that has been invisible to this world for billions of years, allowing the light of the stars to finally reach the rocky ground. This transparency is essential for the stabilization of the new climate, as it allows for a more natural exchange of energy between the planet and the cosmos. The world is no longer a closed system of fire, but an open world that is finally beginning to find its place in the cold, refreshing dark of the solar system. The majestic but lethargic rotation of the planet, where a single day lasts longer than a local year, must be accelerated through a series of massive kinetic planetary nudges. By speeding up the spin of the world through the strategic impact of icy comets, or the use of colossal ion engines, we initiate the dormant geodynamo deep within the core. This internal movement eventually generates a protective natural magnetic field, a shield that is necessary to prevent the solar wind from stripping away the newly formed watery atmosphere. This newly established rhythm also normalizes the day-night cycles, creating a predictable and life-sustaining pulse of light and dark that is essential for the stabilization of complex weather patterns. Instead of months of unrelenting heat followed by months of freezing darkness, the world begins to experience the familiar steady cadence of a 24-hour day. This accelerated rotation helps to distribute the surface heat more evenly, preventing the formation of the massive destructive superstorms that once dominated the Venusian sky. Notice how the steady rhythmic cadence of your own breathing matches this new, healthy pulse of the planet, a slow and deliberate cycle of renewal. Let the awareness of your own heartbeat ground you in the present, feeling the quiet and powerful energy that sustains your resting body. You're in perfect sync with the stabilizing world, drifting comfortably into the peaceful, predictable dark of a world that has finally learned to turn. Once the billions of tons of carbon are successfully sequestered as solid graphite and limestone deep within the planetary crust, the crushing weight of the atmosphere begins to lift. The surface pressure, which once exceeded the crushing depths of a terrestrial ocean and could flatten a steel hull, drops steadily toward a level that is survivable for complex organisms. This monumental reduction in weight allows the thick, hazy air to clarify and thin, revealing the ancient scorched topography in stunning, high-definition detail for the first time. This transition from high-pressure hell to a breathable sky is the most difficult and rewarding phase of the reversal, representing the physical liberation of the planet. The air becomes a friend rather than an enemy, a fluid that supports the flight of birds and the movement of clouds rather than a crushing weight of lead. The world has been made light again, stripped of its toxic baggage, and ready to be filled with the vibrancy of life. A biological army of microscopic marvels is deployed into the remaining plumes of toxic mist to finish the work that the machines began. If we were to look closer at the sky, we would notice the subtle green shimmer of absolute legions of engineered acid-eating algae drifting through the upper atmosphere. These microscopic pioneers thrive in the remaining corrosive environment, feeding greedily on the residual sulfuric acid to fuel their own rapid expansion and continuous oxygen production. They act as a living, self-replicating filtration system, slowly but surely clarifying the remaining toxic skies and preparing the atmosphere for the eventual arrival of more fragile terrestrial life. As they consume the acid, they release a fine, oxygen-rich mist that contributes to the cooling hiss of sulphurous clouds, neutralizing into an endless ocean of carbonated water. The golden, hazy sky of the past is gradually replaced by a pale, misty green that signals the chemical victory of biology over the toxic wasteland. The algae eventually fall to the surface as organic sediment, providing a rich, nutrient-dense base for the first aquatic plants that will soon colonize the new oceans. This biological bridge is the essential link between the engineered cooling and the flourishing of a complex self-sustaining ecosystem. The sky is being cleaned by the very life it was meant to sustain, a beautiful cycle of mutual restoration that prepares the world for its final, tropical form. The surface of the planet, which has been physically crushed and flattened for millennia under the staggering weight of a 1,000-mile-deep atmosphere, begins to undergo a spectacular crustal rebound. As the atmospheric pressure is lifted, the planetary crust begins to crack and heave, rising upward in a massive slow-motion adjustment to its new, lighter equilibrium. Long-buried geological features are thrust into the light, creating jagged new mountain ranges and deep, cavernous valleys that will soon be the basins for the planet's permanent oceans. The sound of the planet cracking and adjusting is a deep, resonant groan that echoes through the newly thinned air, a sign of a world that is physically stretching and waking up. This geological awakening creates a dynamic and varied landscape, replacing the flat, crushed plains with a topography of incredible beauty and potential. The cooling hiss of sulphurous clouds neutralizing into an endless ocean of carbonated water fills these new valleys, creating the first rivers and lakes of a reborn world. What was once a hellish inferno of molten lead and sulphurous rain eventually and beautifully settles into its final form as a tropical ocean-covered paradise. The thick, cooling mists finally give way to a brilliant blue sky that looks down upon sprawling archipelagos, white sand beaches, and shallow, vibrant seas of carbonated water. This is the ultimate triumphant reversal of destiny, where the most hostile world in the solar system is transformed into a lush, tranquil garden of eternal summer. The air is warm and humid, carrying the scent of salt spray and the first terrestrial blooms that have been seeded along the coastal margins. The cooling hiss of sulphurous clouds neutralizing into an endless ocean of carbonated water has been replaced by the gentle, rhythmic lapping of waves against the shore. This ocean, naturally fizzing with the remnants of the old atmosphere, provides a unique and nourishing environment for an explosion of aquatic life that will eventually fill the world with colour and movement. This final wonder is a testament to the power of engineering and the resilience of life. A world that was once dead and is now more vibrant than anything we could have imagined. As the sun sets over the sparkling carbonated waves, the world is at peace, a tropical sanctuary in the heart of the solar system. Let the warmth and the light of this final vision carry you into the deepest, most restorative sleep, knowing that even the harshest fires can be turned into a garden. The garden of the inner worlds finds its mirror in the deep, frozen reaches of the Jovian and Saturnian systems, where life-giving liquid is not found on the surface, but hidden beneath shells of ancient kilometre-thick ice. Moons like Europa and Enceladus already possess more liquid water than Earth, sequestered in vast global abysses that have remained liquid for billions of years thanks to the constant rhythmic tugging of their massive parent planets. While the inner planets struggle to hold their oceans against the scorching sun, these outer sentinels have guarded their treasures beneath protective frozen armour. If we were to look closer, we would realise that the volume of these hidden oceans dwarfs the combined surface waters of our home world, offering a nearly limitless cradle for a new kind of aquatic civilization. This staggering abundance of liquid represents the ultimate reservoir for future biospheres, a dark and silent frontier waiting for the light of engineering to wake it from its long slumber. The deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter serves as a constant reminder of the immense pressures and hidden energies churning within these frigid moving shells. The crust of these moons acts as a natural pressure vessel, keeping the internal oceans from boiling away into the vacuum of space while the interior heat remains trapped and focused. As the outer solar system is gradually tamed, these moons become the central hubs of a new, aquatic civilization that lives and breathes within the deep. The journey into the outer dark is not a search for water, but a quest to unlock the titanic oceans that have always been there, waiting in the dark for a voice to answer. Surprisingly, the dark and silent depths of these abyssal oceans are not the cold, sterile graveyards one might expect, but are instead warmed by the internal fires of the moons themselves. Autonomous, sub-ice submarines are deployed to navigate these lightless expanses, mapping the complex networks of geothermal vents that erupt from the rocky seabed like smoking chimneys. These robotic explorers are meticulously designed to withstand crushing pressures while tracing the mineral-rich plumes of heat that rise through the water column in the dark. The mapping of these vents reveals a hidden volcanic geography that mirrors the tectonic activity of the inner worlds, creating localized zones of extreme thermal activity. These vents provide the essential chemical energy needed to support life in the absolute absence of sunlight, acting as the beating thermal hearts of the moon's interior biosphere. The submarines move through the dark with surgical precision, their sonar arrays recording the deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter. By identifying the most active hydrothermal sites, engineers can strategically place the first biological seeds in areas with the highest potential for growth and survival. These maps become the essential blueprints for a subsurface civilization that draws its life from the heat of the core rather than the light of the sun. The dark oceans are no longer a mystery, but a surveyed and understood territory, ready for the arrival of life in the deepest reaches where the crust meets the sea. To bridge the gap between the hidden oceans and the sky, giant orbital lasers are positioned in stable orbits to carve permanent breathing holes through miles of solid surface ice. These focused beams of high-energy light melt through the frozen crust with terrifying efficiency, creating massive vertical shafts that allow for the exchange of gases and the deployment of surface infrastructure. These apertures act as the literal nostrils of the moon, connecting the dark interior to the wider cosmos while allowing the internal pressure to vent safely. As the lasers slice through the ice, the surrounding landscape shudders, creating a symphony of mechanical groans and sharp cracks that echo across the airless plains. The deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter is amplified as the structural integrity of the shell is deliberately compromised to foster new life. These breathing holes are kept open through constant thermal maintenance, preventing the absolute cold of space from sealing the ocean away once again in its icy tomb. Through these shafts, the internal pressure of the moon is regulated, allowing excess gases to vent and the first traces of oxygen to be introduced into the water below. They serve as the primary conduits for transportation, allowing vessels to pass freely between the orbital stations and the abyssal cities in the dark. The frozen shell is no longer an impenetrable barrier, but a managed filter for a world coming alive under the light of the stars that once seemed so distant. Introducing specifically engineered bioluminescent algae would light up the dark subsurface oceans, creating an ethereal underwater biosphere that glows with a soft neon radiance. These microscopic organisms are designed to thrive on the chemical energy of the geothermal vents, multiplying until the entire abyssal sky is illuminated by a living rhythmic pulse of light. The dark water is transformed into a shimmering bioluminescent cathedral, where every movement of a submarine or a creature creates a trail of liquid, violet fire. This living light provides the necessary illumination for more complex organisms to evolve and thrive in the deep, allowing for a vision-based ecology to take root in the dark. The colours shift from soft cyan to deep violet, following the currents of the ocean and the distribution of nutrients in a mesmerising underwater aurora. The deep resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter provides a low percussive backdrop to this silent glowing world of biological light. As you drift through this luminous underwater sanctuary, feel the gentle, buoyant support of the water mirroring the weightless relaxation of your own body as it rests. Just as the bioluminescence fills the dark with peace, let a sense of profound calm fill your resting mind and your tired limbs. You're safely anchored, suspended in a state of perfect glowing stillness as the deep world wakes up to its own inner light and finds its voice. The extreme lethal radiation of Jupiter's massive magnetic field requires that any surface habitats on its moons be buried deep beneath the thick protective layer of the ice. The frozen crust acts as a natural and impenetrable radiation shield, absorbing the high-energy particles before they can ever reach the delicate structures of the living world below. Humans and their biological companions find their safety not under a sky of stars, but within the vast cavernous halls carved into the underside of the ice shell itself. These inverted cities hang like stalactites over the dark oceans, their lights reflecting off the undulating surface of the water below in a mirror of light. This structure of survival turns the moon's hostile exterior into a fortress, utilising the very ice that once imprisoned the water as a guardian for the new inhabitants. The deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter vibrates through the floors of these cities, a constant reminder of the titanic forces at play. Inside these sheltered environments, the air is thick and warm, a perfect contrast to the airless radioactive desert on the surface above. Residents look down into the glowing algae-filled abyss instead of up at the lethal sky, finding their sense of home in the deep, dark spaces. The ice shell is the ceiling of their world, a frozen firmament that guarantees their peace while the storms of radiation rage harmlessly outside their frozen walls. Surprisingly, the primary source of energy for these distant worlds is not the weak light of the sun, but the titanic gravitational tug-of-war exerted by the gas giants themselves. This tidal heating, generated by the constant stretching and squeezing of the moon's rocky interior as it orbits its massive parent, provides an endless and natural source of geothermal energy. The friction produced by this gravitational massage generates immense heat at the core, fueling the volcanic activity that keeps the oceans liquid in the dark. This process is a perpetual celestial engine that requires no maintenance and will continue for as long as the moons remain in their eccentric orbits around the giants. Engineers harness this energy by tapping into the hydrothermal systems, converting the heat of the gravity itself into the power needed to run the great abyssal cities. The deep resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter is the audible manifestation of this internal friction, the sound of a moon being physically warmed by gravity. Tidal heating ensures that even in the cold, outer reaches of the solar system, life has a reliable and inexhaustible thermal anchor to sustain it. The moons are not dead rocks, but dynamic, flexing bodies that pulse with the energy of the heavens as they orbit their massive masters. This gravitational warmth is the foundational secret to the outer moon's potential, a gift of fire from the giants to the tiny worlds that circle them in the void. Titan's thick, hazy atmosphere of nitrogen and methane is already a prebiotic chemical factory, a frozen laboratory waiting for the spark of engineering to initiate its transformation. Unlike the airless ice moons, Titan possesses a dense sky that is rich in organic molecules, mirroring the conditions of the early Earth before the arrival of life. This structure of orange mists and hydrocarbon rains holds the essential building blocks for a future biosphere, locked in a state of cryogenic suspension for billions of years. If we were to look closer at the chemical composition of the air, we would see a complex soup of tholins and amino acid precursors drifting through the frigid sky. The introduction of heat and oxygen would trigger a cascading sequence of chemical reactions, converting the toxic methane into breathable gases and liquid water. The deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter is echoed here by the slow, heavy movement of nitrogen clouds across a world on the brink of change. Titan represents a unique opportunity to grow a world from its own native chemistry, utilizing the bounty of its own sky to create a home. The orange haze is not a barrier, but a reservoir of potential that is ready to be ignited by the touch of human engineering and vision. Once the spark is struck, the prebiotic factory will become a living garden, a world built from the molecules of its own ancient misty past. Warming the surface of Titan would release immense amounts of locked-up gases from the frozen crust, creating a bizarre and incredibly high-pressure greenhouse world. As the planetary temperature rises, the vast deposits of frozen methane and ammonia sublime into the sky, thickening the atmosphere to a degree that would be crushing to terrestrial life. This engineered greenhouse effect acts as a self-sustaining heater, trapping what little solar energy reaches the moon and amplifying the internal warmth for centuries. The resulting environment is a dense, misty, and intensely humid world where the air is as thick as a fluid, allowing for flight with the simplest of wingsuits. The deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter is replaced on Titan by the heavy, booming thunder of nitrogen storms. This high-pressure cradle is a transitional phase, a necessary extreme that allows the moon to eventually stabilize into a temperate, life-bearing world of mist and shadows. As you imagine the thick, warm mists of Titan enveloping the landscape, let a similar feeling of cozy, heavy warmth envelop your own body as it rests. Notice the weight of the air pressing gently and safely against you, encouraging you to let go of any remaining tension in your back and shoulders. You're resting in a high-pressure sanctuary of peace, where every breath is deep, easy, and profoundly restorative for the spirit as the world transforms. Terraforming an ice moon often means the radical and total melting of its frozen shell, turning a solid sphere of ice and rock into a global drop of water. This process involves the systematic application of orbital mirrors and thermal boreholes until the structural integrity of the crust fails and the hidden ocean erupts across the entire surface. The moon essentially sheds its frozen skin, revealing a world that is defined entirely by its deep and shoreless oceans, stretching from pole to pole. This transformation is a spectacular display of planetary scale physics, where the solid world becomes a fluid one in a matter of a few short centuries. The deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter culminates in a final shattering roar as the last of the ice shelves collapse into the rising tide. The world is reborn as a blue, watery pearl, a singular ocean that encompasses the entire globe without a single continent or island in sight. This global ocean provides a vast, three-dimensional habitat for aquatic life, free from the limitations of land and the constraints of the crust. The water becomes the planet, a fluid home that is managed and balanced through the wisdom of the engineers and the movement of the tides. The moon is no longer a rock, but a living drop of life suspended in the dark, silent reaches of the outer solar system, a monument to change. The low gravity of these outer moons means that the waves on their newly exposed global oceans would tower hundreds of feet high, while moving with a slow and hypnotic grace. Without the heavy pull of a massive core to dampen their energy, the tides generated by the gas giants create colossal walls of water that roll across the planet like moving mountains. These waves do not crash with the violent spray of terrestrial surf, but instead rise and fall in a rhythmic, slow-motion dance that defies the expectations of the inner worlds. If we were to stand on a floating platform, we would see these towering crests approaching from the horizon, shimmering with the light of the bioluminescent algae below. The deep, resonant groan of shifting tectonic ice plates under a warming Jupiter is replaced by the deep, heavy thrum of the water itself as it moves in these titanic, slow volumes. The sound is a low-frequency hum that vibrates through the very air, a planetary music of liquid and gravity that resonates through the soul. These massive waves are a visual testament to the unique environment of the outer moons, a world where the physical laws are softened and transformed into something beautiful. The ocean is a place of immense power and serene beauty, a fluid landscape that invites a sense of profound awe in the face of the giants. As the moon rolls beneath the giant, the waves continue their eternal slow-motion journey, a rhythmic pulse that marks the life of a world reclaimed from the ice. Within these massive synthetic bubbles, a new landscape begins to take shape, shielded from the biting winds and the heavy, slow-motion rain of the transitional era. The membranes are designed to be self-healing, utilizing advanced polymers that seal punctures automatically to maintain the delicate internal equilibrium of the city. As you look up through the translucent ceiling, you can see the distorted shapes of the clouds passing by, a reminder of the larger world being born just outside the glass. This stage of settlement allows for the testing of localized biospheres on a grand scale, turning every crater into a unique experiment in ecology and architecture. The tent cities act as stepping stones toward a future where the entire planet will be a single, open habitat. But for now, they are precious jewels of life. They provide a sheltered space where the first true communities can take root, living in a world that is half engineered and half wild. Deep within the ancient volcanic plateaus, the planet offers a more permanent and secure refuge in the form of sprawling natural lava tubes. This structure of hardened basaltic corridors, carved by molten rivers in the planet's distant and fiery youth, offers a series of radiation-shielded bunkers that can be sealed and pressurized with minimal engineering effort. By utilizing these ready-made subterranean catacombs, early settlers find a sanctuary that is naturally insulated from the extreme temperature swings and lethal cosmic rays of the surface. The walls of these tubes are smooth and glassy, reflecting the soft interior lights of the settlement in a way that makes the deep rock feel spacious and welcoming. Because they are located deep underground, these habitats are unaffected by the violent dust storms or the changing seasons of the surface, providing a constant and predictable environment for life. The sheer volume of these tubes is staggering, with some chambers large enough to house entire metropolitan districts beneath a ceiling of solid, protective stone. Engineers simply seal the natural entrances and install massive airlocks, transforming a geological relic into a high-tech fortress of human ingenuity. This subterranean lifestyle becomes a hallmark of early colonization, a way of living in harmony with the planet's own internal geometry. The lava tubes are the silent, steady anchors of the new civilization, providing a sense of geological permanence in a world of rapid and monumental change. Surprisingly, the foundations of these cities are laid long before a human foot ever touches the dust, carried out by absolute legions of autonomous three-dimensional printing rovers. These tireless mechanical architects extract raw minerals directly from the surrounding regolith, melting and extruding the rocky dirt into sophisticated interlocking settlement shells. They work in a silent collective harmony, constructing entire neighborhoods of reinforced habitats that are chemically bonded to the landscape they stand upon. The rovers utilize solar power to fuel their constant labor, moving slowly across the plains like giant metallic beetles as they build the world of the future. Each structure they create is mathematically optimized for strength and thermal efficiency, utilizing the natural properties of the local stone to create a breathable interior. By the time the first human transports arrive, they find a fully realized urban landscape waiting for them, complete with pressurized corridors and reinforced storage bays. Notice how the steady, repetitive rhythm of these machines reflects the patient and methodical pace of the terraforming journey itself. As you sink deeper into the quiet surface supporting you, let a sense of profound calm settle over your resting body, knowing that the heavy work of construction has already been completed. Your limbs are heavy and relaxed, mirroring the solid and unshakable foundations of the cities being built in the distant red dust. If we were to look closer at the high-tech skins of the habitat domes, we would find a shimmering layer of aerogel insulation that acts as a thermal miracle. This incredibly light, porous material, often called frozen smoke, is layered into the transparent canopies to trap precious internal heat while remaining almost entirely clear to the incoming sunlight. It allows the sun's weak rays to nourish the interior gardens while preventing the warmth from escaping into the freezing night, creating a passive and efficient greenhouse effect. The aerogel is composed of more than 90% air, making it an almost perfect insulator that can withstand the extreme temperature gradients of the Martian or Jovian surface. It is held within thin, durable layers of polymer, creating a window that is as strong as it is insulating, a barrier that keeps the interior at a constant, balmy temperature. This material is the secret to the thermal comfort of the domes, allowing for the growth of tropical plants even in the heart of a polar winter. Looking through an aerogel window, the world outside takes on a soft, ethereal quality, as if the landscape were viewed through a fine morning mist. This softening of the light provides a sense of visual comfort, reducing the harsh glare of the unshielded sun while maintaining a connection to the horizon. It is a physical manifestation of the engineering philosophy that seeks to bridge the gap between the hostile void and the needs of a living, breathing biosphere. High above the construction sites and the sprawling domes, massive rotating space stations drift in geostationary orbit, serving as the primary staging grounds and control centers for the terraforming machinery below. These spinning rings of light provide a constant, comfortable gravity for the engineers and coordinators who direct the global transformation from the safety of the void. They act as the central nervous system of the project, relaying real-time data between the surface rovers and the deep space supply freighters that arrive from the inner worlds. The view from these stations is one of breathtaking and constant change, as they watch the red desert slowly turn green and the polar caps retreat under the gaze of the orbital mirrors. The stations are equipped with massive communication arrays and high-resolution sensors that monitor every aspect of the planet's developing climate, from the moisture in the soil to the density of the clouds. They are the eyes of the project, ensuring that every phase of the engineering is proceeding according to the grand, multi-generational plan. Residents of these orbital hubs live in a state of perpetual transition, moving between the weightlessness of the docking bays and the familiar pull of the rotating living quarters. This structure of life in the sky provides a necessary perspective on the work being done below, a reminder of the planetary scale of the endeavour. The stations are the lanterns of the system, shining brightly in the dark as they guide the birth of a new world from the silence of space. Inside the central biodomes of the surface settlements, life is organised into carefully balanced micro-ecosystems designed to process waste and generate a continuous supply of fresh food. Every plant and microbe is a functional part of a closed-loop survival system, where the carbon dioxide exhaled by the residents is immediately converted back into breathable oxygen by lush, vertical gardens. These domes are more than just farms. They are living machines that maintain the chemical equilibrium of the settlement with a quiet biological efficiency. The sound of water trickling through the hydroponic troughs provides a soothing, natural soundtrack to daily life, a rhythmic reminder of the cycle of life that sustains the colony. These ecosystems are meticulously managed by artificial intelligence systems that adjust the light, humidity, and nutrient levels to ensure a constant harvest. The biodomes become the social and emotional hearts of the cities, places where the inhabitants can walk among trees and breathe air that is thick with the scent of wet earth and growing leaves. Allow your own breath to naturally match the slow, deliberate, and patient pace of this biological engine. As you inhale deeply, imagine drawing in the pure, oxygenated air of the gardens, and as you exhale, release any lingering, stubborn tension from your resting body. You are currently resting in a quiet space of perfect equilibrium, completely safe, deeply comfortable, and entirely at peace within the circle of life. To bring the psychological comfort of natural light into the deep, subterranean levels of the lava tube cities, massive mirror arrays are positioned on the surface to capture and concentrate the sun's rays. This structure of high-precision optics channels the light deep underground through an intricate network of fiber optic cables, illuminating the lower corridors with a soft, natural glow. It ensures that even those living miles beneath the surface can experience the rhythmic passage of day and night through the presence of real, unadulterated sunlight. The light is filtered and diffused as it travels through the cables, removing the harmful ultraviolet rays while preserving the warm, full spectrum that the human eye requires for health and comfort. This engineered sunlight nourishes the mosses and ferns that grow along the interior walls of the tunnels, creating a lush, green environment in the heart of the rock. It provides a vital connection to the world above, a reminder that the sun is still there, even when the stars are hidden behind a mile of solid basalt. The intensity of the light is adjusted throughout the day to mimic the natural cycle of dawn, noon, and dusk, helping to maintain the circadian rhythms of the inhabitants. Looking up at a light terminal in a subterranean park, one could almost forget they were deep within the crust of another planet. This mastery of light is a testament to the fact that a home is built not just from walls and roofs, but from the very rays of the star that brought the world to life. The architecture of early Martian cities is dictated by the unique fluid dynamics of a thickening atmosphere, featuring rounded aerodynamic shapes designed to withstand extreme wind speeds. These low-profile buildings are sculpted to allow the violent dust storms of the transitional era to flow smoothly over their surfaces rather than catching against flat walls and causing structural stress. It creates a futuristic, organic aesthetic where the cities look less like rigid, metallic bunkers and more like smooth, polished riverstones resting in the red sand. These buildings are often partially buried or integrated into the natural contours of the craters, utilizing the planetary geology as a natural windbreak. The smooth curves of the structures are reinforced with carbon fiber composites and local basalt, creating a shell that is incredibly durable and resistant to the abrasive touch of the windblown dust. Inside, the rounded walls create a sense of flowing, open space, a design that feels less like a cage and more like a sheltered natural cavern. The wind itself becomes a source of energy for these cities, as specialized turbines are integrated into the aerodynamic curves to harvest the power of the storms. This approach to design turns the challenges of the environment into a functional advantage, creating a civilization that is physically shaped by the world it inhabits. The cities are not imposed upon the landscape, they're grown from it, a part of the planet's new and dynamic identity. This structural philosophy of safety and utility extends to the very walls of the habitats, which are often constructed with thick, transparent layers of circulating liquid. These water walls are built into the sides of the living quarters to serve as a dual-purpose system of radiation shielding and emergency water reservoirs. The dense fluid effectively absorbs incoming cosmic rays and secondary particles, providing a level of protection that exceeds that of many solid materials while remaining entirely clear. The water is constantly filtered and circulated through the walls, creating a serene blue visual boundary that connects the inhabitants to the life-giving resource they are working so hard to cultivate. In the event of an emergency, the water can be diverted to the life support systems or the fire suppression arrays, providing a critical layer of redundancy for the settlement. This design turns a survival necessity into an aesthetic feature, creating a sense of being enveloped in a quiet underwater sanctuary. Looking through a water wall at the dusty horizon outside, the landscape is softened and tinted by the blue of the liquid, a visual reminder of the transformation being wrought on the planet. The movement of the water is slow and rhythmic, a visual pulse that matches the steady hum of the city's life support. It is a symbol of the fluid and adaptable nature of human life as it expands into the stars, carrying its own oceans with it into the dark. Inside these bubbles of life, the sensory experience is a complex and comforting tapestry that stands in stark contrast to the sterile vacuum and the cold dust outside. The hum of air recyclers echoes through the cavernous subterranean city, a constant mechanical reminder of the technology that keeps the cold at bay and the oxygen flowing. The air always smells faintly of ozone from the atmospheric scrubbers, the sharp, refreshing scent of hydroponic basil from the nearby gardens, and the lingering, earthy aroma of filtered dust. This unique fragrance becomes the signature of home for the new generation, a scent that signifies safety, community, and the ongoing labour of planetary rebirth. The light is soft and warm, reflecting off the water walls and the glassy surfaces of the lava tubes, creating an environment that feels alive and vibrant. Every sound and every scent is a part of a carefully managed equilibrium, a delicate balance between the machines of the engineers and the growth of the biology. As you drift closer to the final edge of wakefulness, let these familiar, comforting sensations envelop you, carrying you into a state of perfect restorative rest. The hum of the city is a lullaby, a mechanical song of protection that will continue long after you have closed your eyes. You are home in the heart of the new world, safe and secure within the architecture of life, as the stars twinkle silently in the deep blue sky far above. The hum of the city serves as a lingering mechanical lullaby, a song of protection that reminds us that this world is not a destination for the living, but a long-term commitment for the unborn. True planetary engineering is a staggering multi-generational project that demands centuries of unbroken, unwavering commitment from every soul that walks the changing regolith. It is a slow, relay race across time, where the successes of one century are merely the foundations for the labour of the next, and where the baton of life is passed from hand to hand across the void of the ages. Those who initiate the first thaws will never see the first forests, and those who plant the first seeds will never breathe the final open air, yet they are all bound together by a singular, transcendent purpose. This collective dedication forms the backbone of the new civilization, a social contract that transcends the individual life in favour of the planetary whole. It requires a stability of intent that is almost unknown in the chaotic histories of old Earth, a stillness of heart that allows the dream of a green world to survive the passing of kings and the shifting of political currents. The commitment is a silent, heavy weight carried with pride, a knowledge that every day of labour is a brick in a cathedral that will span the millennia. It is the defining characteristic of the new human spirit, a shift from the immediate to the eternal. This shared vision ensures that the machines never stop and the mirrors never drift, holding the line for a future they can only imagine in their deepest dreams. Deep within the chronology of a world reborn, the initial warming phase of a frozen planet alone represents 100 years of constant, unyielding effort. For 100 years, the orbital mirrors must remain perfectly aligned, and the greenhouse factories must churn without pause just to coax the first liquid water from the iron-hard permafrost. This era is a silent testament to human patience, a long period where the visible changes are so subtle they are measured in the silent accumulation of a single millimetre of topsoil over a century of patient weathering. We watch as the red deserts slowly, agonisingly transition into muddy browns, a process that happens so slowly it is almost imperceptible to the naked eye. Each year, the planetary temperature nudges upward by a fraction of a degree, a minuscule victory that must be defended against the cooling influence of deep space. The engineers of this century are the stoics of the stars, finding joy not in the bloom of a flower, but in the first drop of meltwater that clings to a canyon wall. They understand that their entire existence is a prelude, a slow and necessary heating of the cosmic oven before the life can be baked. This first 100 years is the most difficult of the journey, for it offers the least visual reward, demanding total faith in the laws of physics and the reliability of the machines. The silence of the desert is slowly replaced by the sound of the thaw, a rhythmic dripping that signals the beginning of the end for the great ice. Surprisingly, the establishment of a truly breathable oxygen atmosphere remains the slowest and most daunting process of the entire journey, requiring several millennia of continuous biological photosynthesis. While we can melt the ice and thicken the air with greenhouse gases in a few hundred years, the slow, chemical labour of splitting carbon dioxide and liberating free oxygen is a task that spans thousands of orbits. It is a timeline that dwarfs the history of many civilizations, requiring a patience that is almost geological in its scope, and a dedication that refuses to be discouraged by the slow pace of change. Every leaf that unfurls and every algal bloom that surfaces in the shallow seas is a tiny, microscopic factory, contributing to a total that will take 3,000 years to complete. We are currently living in the long, oxygen-poor shadow of this transition, where the air is thick but still lethal, a tantalizing promise of what is to come for the distant ancestors of our children. This slow accumulation of breath is the ultimate test of the project, a biological marathon that cannot be cheated by technology or rushed by simple human desire. It is a reminder that while we can manipulate the rock and the light, the fundamental cycles of life move at their own, ancient and unhurried pace. We are guests in this process, providing the conditions for life to do the work that we cannot do ourselves. The sky turns blue long before it is safe to breathe, a visual lie that hides the millennia of work still remaining for the plants. If we were to look closer at the heart of the project, we would find that the massive and complex terraforming infrastructure must be managed by immortal artificial intelligence systems. Human lifetimes are simply too short, too fragile, and too prone to distraction to oversee the minute, centuries-long shifts in atmospheric pressure and mineral cycles that define a planet's health. These silicon guardians watch over the world with a tireless, unblinking gaze, ensuring that the grand design remains on course long after the original engineers have returned to the dust of their home. They manage the orbital mirrors with nanosecond precision, adjust the greenhouse factories to compensate for solar flares, and monitor the chemical balance of every river and ocean. They are the memory of the planet, carrying the intentions of the founders through the centuries and serving as a bridge between the generations of humans who serve the world. These machines do not grow weary or forgetful. They are the steady hands on the tiller of the world, steering the biosphere through the storms of the ages. They provide the continuity that the human spirit lacks, a structural permanence that allows the multi-generational dream to survive the frailty of the flesh. Without their guidance, the atmosphere would quickly drift back into chaos, undoing the work of centuries in a single season of neglect. They are the silent partners in the creation of a world, the immortal observers of a mortal struggle. As you contemplate these vast stretches of time, notice how your own breath slows to match the deep, rhythmic pulse of the planet's awakening. Feel the steady, comforting weight of your body pressing into your bed, a quiet anchor in the rushing stream of the centuries. You are safe and still, existing in a moment of perfect peace, while the world outside is sculpted by the slow, patient hands of the machines and the stars. This structure of long-term thinking gives rise to unique cultures devoted entirely to the terraforming effort, where deep philosophies are centered around the virtue of radical, selfless patience. These societies cherish the act of planting trees they will never sit under, finding profound meaning in the brief but essential contribution they make to a masterpiece they will never see completed. They live for the distant future, viewing their individual lives as small but vital links in a chain that reaches from the sterile past to the green future. This cathedral thinking shapes every aspect of their art, their religion, and their social order, prioritizing the health of the world over the desires of the present. They find beauty in the silent accumulation of a single millimeter of topsoil over a century of patient weathering, celebrating the microscopic victories of the dirt. To them, a child born today is a caretaker of a world that will not be fully born for another dozen lifetimes, a holy responsibility that is embraced with a quiet and humble grace. They are the gardeners of time, cultivating a reality that exists only in the mind's eye of the collective. Their stories are not of conquest or war, but of the slow turning of a desert into a meadow and the patient arrival of the rain. They understand that their legacy is invisible to them, a treasure that will only be spent by those who come 1,000 years after they have gone. An unexpected consequence of the engineering process is that it forces millions of years of natural chemical evolution into just a few short centuries, effectively compressing geologic time into a human scale. This accelerated weathering of the rock and the rapid formation of the atmosphere would normally take eons of random volcanic activity and chance impacts, but under the guidance of the mirrors and the rovers, it becomes a visible metamorphosis. We are witnessing the birth of a world at high speed, a frantic and beautiful race to create a sanctuary where the universe once held only a cold and silent indifference. What would take 1,000,000 years of rain to erode into soil, the lichen and the acid factories accomplish in a generation, stripping the minerals from the stone and prepping the ground for the green. This compression creates a dynamic and ever-changing landscape, where the geography itself seems to shift and soften from year to year. It is a dizzying perspective for those used to the static nature of old Earth, a reminder that with enough energy and will, the very bones of a planet can be remade. We have taken the slow, grinding gears of the cosmos and accelerated them, turning a geological epoch into a manageable project. The mountains surrender their jagged edges to the artificial rain, and the plains are carpeted in green long before nature would have allowed. This artificial haste is the only way to bridge the gap between the needs of the living and the timescales of the universe. The transition from a sterile, abiotic world to a living, self-sustaining biosphere represents the crossing of a profound and irreversible cosmic threshold. It is the moment when the planet ceases to be merely a collection of rocks and gases and becomes a single, integrated organism capable of growth, response, and eventual healing. This shift is the ultimate goal of the entire journey, a transition that changes the very identity of the world in the eyes of the universe. One day, the sensors will record the first self-sustaining nitrogen cycle, or the first forest that produces more oxygen than it consumes, and at that moment, the machines can begin to step back. The planet crosses from the realm of physics and chemistry into the realm of biology, a spark of life where none was before, ignited by the persistence of the pioneers. This threshold is the true triumph of the project, the point at which a manufactured environment becomes a natural one. It is a rare event in the cosmos, the intentional creation of a living world from a dead one, a milestone that will be remembered for as long as there are minds to record it. Once the threshold is crossed, the world begins to take care of itself, finding its own balance and protecting its own life. We are the midwives of this rebirth, assisting in a delivery that has been 3 billion years in the making. Let your awareness drift even further now, feeling the absolute total relaxation of your hands and feet as you surrender to the quiet stillness of the room. You are a part of this living threshold, a quiet witness to the incredible persistence of life as it reaches across the cold dark to find a home. Your mind is calm, and your heart beats with the steady, quiet confidence of a world that has finally, beautifully, learned how to live. This fragile balance of the new world is incredibly sensitive, where even minor mistakes in atmospheric balancing can trigger catastrophic and runaway greenhouse effects. A slight miscalculation in the release of trace gases, or a failure to properly sequester the carbon, can set the entire project back by decades, forcing the engineers and the machines to frantically recalibrate the planet's thermal heart. Every decision is weighted with the terrifying knowledge that the hard-won progress of a century can be unravelled by a single season of atmospheric instability or a solar flare that is not properly deflected. The balance between a frozen desert and a boiling cauldron is razor-thin, a delicate game of thermal equilibrium that requires constant, vigilant management. This risk creates a culture of extreme precision and redundancy, where every system is checked and rechecked by the AI guardians. We are walking a tightrope across the centuries, holding the climate in our hands like a fragile glass bird that could shatter at the slightest tremor. The fear of a runaway effect is the silent companion of every engineer, a reminder of the raw, untamed power of the forces we're attempting to harness. It keeps the civilization grounded, a humble acknowledgement that despite our power, we are still subject to the laws of thermodynamics. A world is a living thing, and like any living thing, it requires a steady hand and a watchful eye to prevent it from spiraling out of control. Notice how the early settlers are merely caretakers of a world being prepared for their distant, unknown descendants, living their lives in the service of a ghost. They move through the muddy, transitional phase, labouring in a landscape that is still hostile, half-formed and unfinished, so that future generations might one day breathe the open air. Their legacy is not found in the silent accumulation of a single millimetre of topsoil over a century of patient weathering. They are the bridge between the red dust of the past and the green forests of the future, a generation that exists solely to ensure the survival and the prosperity of the next. They accept the limitations of their lives, the recycled air, the shielded domes, the gravity of a smaller world, with a sense of profound purpose, knowing that their small sacrifices are the seeds of a global garden. Their reward is not in the final harvest, but in the noble work itself, in the knowledge that they are part of the most significant story in human history. They are the selfless shepherds of the stars, tending to a flock they will never see fully grown or realise in its final glory. Their graves will be under a sky they helped to turn blue, but they will never feel the wind on their faces without the barrier of a suit. Yet, they work on, driven by a love for a world they will never truly know. When the first forests begin to regulate their own rainfall, and the first oceans maintain their own salinity through biological cycling, the mechanical clocks of the founders can finally be stilled. The ticking of the green world is a quiet, rhythmic pulse that fills the valleys, a song of life that has finally found its voice after billions of years of silence. Every breath of wind through the dark pines and every ripple on the shallow seas is a second passing on this grand planetary timepiece. The end of the journey is not a destination on a map, but a state of being, a world that is finally, perfectly and naturally alive. As you drift into the final embrace of sleep, let the steady, quiet ticking of this world be your guide into the dark of the night. You are part of the clock, a quiet beat in the heart of a world that is finally waking up to the light of its own sun. As you drift into the final embrace of sleep, let the steady, quiet ticking of this world be your guide into the dark of the night, where the light of the sun eventually reveals a persistent and profound whisper of doubt. This long-standing debate centers on whether humanity possesses any inherent cosmic right to alter the pristine ancient geology of a world that has existed in silent mineral perfection for billions of years before our arrival. We find ourselves questioning if our presence is a magnificent gift of life to the void, or merely an intrusive biological scar upon a canvas that was never intended for the messy brushstrokes of carbon-based biology. If we were to look closer at the history of this planet, we would see a record of absolute stillness, a story of rock and radiation that achieved a balance we are now systematically dismantling. This structure of the debate pits the utility of a new home against the sanctity of an untouched wilderness, forcing us to ask if some places in the universe are meant to remain forever beyond the reach of the plough. The very act of engineering the sky implies a hierarchy where our survival outweighs the geological integrity of a sphere that was once a sovereign entity of stone. This realization haunts the edges of our triumphs, a quiet reminder that every green valley comes at the cost of a red one lost forever to the memory of the stars. We are the first species to purposefully rewrite the destiny of a planet, and that power brings with it a terrifying moral vertigo. As you lie in the quiet dark, consider the weight of this choice, feeling the immense scale of the responsibility we have taken upon ourselves to remake the heavens in our own image. Long before the first mirror was polished or the first atmospheric factory began its rhythmic hum, planetary protection protocols dictated an exhaustive, nearly obsessive search for the slightest hint of indigenous microbial life. Scientific teams, acting as the high priests of caution, scoured the deepest rifts, the darkest volcanic vents, and the coldest polar shadows, seeking even the most infinitesimal chemical signature of a native, alien genesis. This ritual of caution was a sacred vigil, a planetary scale effort to ensure that in our desperate haste to build a garden, we did not accidentally commit a catastrophic act of genocide against a life we barely understood. We moved with a quiet, tiptoed reverence across the sterile plains, our instruments tuned to detect the faint rhythmic pulse of a metabolism that might have evolved in total isolation. Surprisingly, the universe is often more subtle than we imagine, and the search for life is frequently a search for the absence of silence rather than the presence of noise. These protocols were the first laws of the New World, a set of moral boundaries that preceded the physical ones, established to protect the unknown from the known. The search was not merely a scientific necessity, but a profound expression of our values as a spacefaring species, a declaration that we would not trample the small to make room for the great. It reflects a hard-won wisdom that life, in any form, is the rarest and most precious commodity in the cold, vast reaches of the dark. By pausing to listen before we began to speak, we honoured the potential for an alien neighbour, even if that neighbour was nothing more than a single shivering cell in the dark. If even a single solitary native bacterium were discovered clinging to life in a lightless cave or a frozen aquifer, it would raise the most agonizing and beautiful question in the history of our species. Should the entire planet be left alone entirely? The discovery of a unique independent alien lineage would instantly transform the world from a convenient playground for human engineering into a sacred, inviolable laboratory of nature. We would be forced to choose between our dream of a second home and the survival of a microscopic monarch that has ruled this world since before the first mountains on Earth were formed. The existence of such a tiny pioneer would suggest that life is a natural, inevitable consequence of the universe's laws, a spark that can catch even in the most hostile and desolate of conditions. This discovery would humble our grandest plans, reminding us that we are not the only protagonists in the story of the stars. It raises the possibility that the planet's true destiny has already been decided by its own native biology, and that our interference would be a violation of a fundamental cosmic sovereignty. Notice how the steady, quiet rhythm of your own heart beats in perfect time with the slow, deliberate pulse of a world that might already be alive in ways we cannot see. Let your awareness drift effortlessly into this space of profound respect, sinking comfortably into the quiet, welcoming embrace of a universe that is full of surprises. You are currently resting in a state of perfect, grounded stillness, a witness to the incredible, persistent mystery of life in the dark. Surprisingly, some of our most visionary philosophers propose a path known as ecopoiesis, a vision where we establish only a basic, self-sustaining microbial biosphere without ever introducing the footprint of human colonization. In this selfless model of creation, we act only as the initial spark of life, utilizing our technology to provide the moisture and the warmth needed for a world to begin its own evolutionary journey. We build the stage and light the lamps, but we never step onto the boards. leaving the world to develop its own unique biology, free from our influence and our needs. This approach would turn the planet into a planetary-scale nature preserve, a world that belongs entirely to itself and to the future versions of the microbes we introduced. It is an act of pure, unadulterated stewardship, a gift of existence given to a world that will never know its makers or understand the complex machinery that made its life possible. We would be the silent, invisible gardeners of the cosmos, tending to a world that we will only ever observe from the safety and the distance of the high orbit. The beauty of ecopoiesis lies in its total rejection of utility, a declaration that life is worth creating simply for the sake of life itself. It challenges our desire to own and to inhabit, offering instead the profound satisfaction of knowing that a new branch of the biological tree is growing in the dark. By choosing to stay in the sky, we allow the ground to become a truly alien paradise, a masterpiece of evolution that we helped to begin but never sought to control. The concept of deep ecology suggests that even the most barren, irradiated and desolate rocks possess an intrinsic value that is entirely independent of human usefulness or the potential for biological growth. This philosophy invites us to appreciate the stark geometric beauty of a dead world as a legitimate and magnificent state of being, rather than a problem that needs to be solved by the introduction of green leaves and blue water. It suggests that a cratered red desert is just as complete as a lush tropical jungle, and that our desire to change it is a reflection of our own limitations rather than a failing of the planet. This structure of thinking forces us to confront our own planetary biases, the idea that a world must look like Earth to be considered valuable or beautiful. It asks us to find the sacred in the silence, to see the holiness in the absolute frozen stillness of a valley that has not seen a drop of rain in 1 billion years. As you feel the quiet, heavy weight of your own body sinking into the support of your bed, consider the profound value of simply existing without the need to be anything other than what you are. To honour the ancient memory of the original untouched world, vast tracts of land known as red preserves are legally protected from the creeping green spread of terraformed biology. These areas are walled off by the natural geography of deep canyons or high plateaus, and further guarded by the strict laws of the new civilization, kept in a state of perpetual, airless silence. Inside these borders, the original red dust, the jagged obsidian rocks, and the view of the unshielded stars remain exactly as they were for eons before the first mirror was launched. They serve as planetary monuments, anchors of history that allow the inhabitants of the green world to remember the harsh and beautiful face of the world as it was during its long billion-year sleep. Visiting a red preserve is a ritual of humility, a journey through a pressurized tunnel to look out upon a landscape that remains intentionally dead and profoundly magnificent in its desolation. These preserves are the museums of the cosmos, preserving the raw data of a world's origin for the scientists and the poets of the future. They provide a necessary contrast to the lush, engineered forests of the lowlands, a reminder of the monumental effort required to bring the world to life. By keeping a portion of the world red, we ensure that we never forget the true nature of the place we have called home, a world that was born in fire and cold. This preservation is a final act of respect for the planet's own history, a promise that we will not let the story of the stone be entirely overwritten by the story of the leaf. Conversely, the desire to spread the fragile flame of life throughout the cold and silent reaches of the solar system is often viewed as a profound moral imperative by the planetary engineers. They see the universe not as a collection of pristine, untouchable monuments, but as a vast dark field that is begging for the warmth of breath, the colour of growth, and the light of consciousness. For these pioneers, leaving a world dead when it could be made to bloom is the true ethical failure, a denial of life's inherent and unstoppable drive to expand and flourish. They argue that life is the only thing in the universe that gives meaning to the matter around it, and that our ability to create new biospheres is the ultimate expression of our humanity. To them, The red dust is a tragic waste of potential, a resource that is currently dormant but could be transformed into 1 billion years of biological history. This desire to share the gift of existence is a generous and expansive philosophy, a belief that the universe is meant to be a garden rather than a graveyard. If we were to look closer at the heart of this drive, we would find a deep-seated optimism, a belief that life is a force of good that justifies the alteration of the stars. It is the same impulse that drove the first creatures out of the ocean and the first humans across the oceans, a restless, beautiful energy that refuses to accept the boundaries of the void. We are the vessels of life's expansion, carrying the seeds of the future into the dark with a sense of sacred duty. Erasing the billion-year geological history of a planet by melting its surface, flooding its canyons and covering its craters with soil is considered by some critics to be a sophisticated form of high-tech cosmic vandalism. They argue that by overwriting the ridges and the valleys that were shaped by the slow movement of the solar system, we are burning the only existing copy of a world's unique and irreplaceable history. To these observers, our cities and our forests are like a child's drawing scribbled over a masterpiece of ancient mineral art, a reduction of a complex truth into a human-made fiction. Notice how the muscles of your jaw, your neck, and your forehead soften as you contemplate the immense weight of this responsibility, finding a deep and quiet peace in the act of simply being. Just as the critics ask us to pause before we change the world, let yourself pause in this moment of perfect, undisturbed stillness. You are currently safely grounded, completely at rest, enveloped in a soft, invisible blanket of peaceful reflection that requires no action from you. The tension of the day is a part of the past, a history that you are now choosing to let go of as you drift closer to the edge of sleep. You are a witness to the debate, a quiet consciousness in the heart of the cosmos, but for now, your only duty is to rest. Let the concerns of the world and the history of the stars fade into a soft, indistinct background, leaving only the steady, calming rhythm of your own breath. Designing a biosphere from scratch allows us to eliminate the scourges of disease, the imbalances of parasites, and the inherent cruelty of predatory systems, raising unsettling questions about the value of such an unnatural engineered perfection. We are building a world where the thorns have been removed, the viruses have been deleted, and the storms have been tamed into a predictable and nurturing cycle of growth. This curated reality is a masterpiece of biological design, a garden that is optimized for comfort and longevity, yet we wonder if it is perhaps too perfect to be truly alive in the ancient sense of the word. We find ourselves asking if life requires the struggle, the pain, and the unpredictable chaos of the wild to maintain its essential, vital spark and its capacity for true evolution. A world without suffering is a magnificent achievement, yet it lacks the harsh, refining fire that shaped the life of our home planet for billions of years. This structure of perfection creates a sense of profound safety, but also a lingering nostalgia for the messy, dangerous and beautiful complexity of a world we did not design. The inhabitants of these perfect forests live in a state of eternal spring, a peace that was once the dream of every terrestrial poet and philosopher. We have become the gods of our own microecologies, choosing which flowers will bloom and which winds will blow with the touch of a screen. This power is the ultimate reward of our engineering, but it is also a final, quiet challenge to our understanding of what it means to be a part of the natural world. Ultimately, the act of turning a dead world green forces humanity to define what it truly means to be a conscious and responsible steward of life in a vast and indifferent cosmos. We're no longer merely the inhabitants of a planet that provides for our needs, but the active architects of its future, carrying the staggering weight of an entire developing biosphere upon our collective shoulders. This realization brings us to a final quiet place of profound humility, where we understand that our greatest achievement is not the power we wield over the rock and the light, but the care and the wisdom we provide to the world that sustains us. This stewardship is a lifelong, multi-generational vow to protect and to nurture the life we have planted, a commitment that defines our new role in the universe. We have become the caretakers of the stars, the guardians of the green fire that we have carried across the dark to these distant shores. The stillness of an untouched, sterile crater preserved forever, as a planetary monument stands as a reminder of where we began, and the lush forests outside the domes are a sign of where we're going. As you surrender completely to the heavy, peaceful embrace of sleep, let the image of this global garden linger in your mind, a radiant symbol of life's incredible persistence and our own potential for grace. The journey is complete, and the world is finally, beautifully and naturally at peace. You are home, you are safe, and the world above is watching over you in a shimmering celestial quiet that will last for an eternity. Terraforming is the ultimate realization that the universe is not a museum to be observed, but a living, breathing canvas where the consciousness of life becomes the very hand that guides the evolution of the stars toward an eternal, flourishing peace. This final wonder is not a single location or a specific machine, but a profound philosophical realization that ties every drop of water and every blade of grass together. Terraforming is the ultimate realization that the universe is not a museum to be observed, but a living, breathing canvas where the consciousness of life becomes the very hand that guides the evolution of the stars toward an eternal, flourishing peace. It is the moment when the observer and the observed merge into a single creative pulse, turning the cold silence of the void into a warm symphonic home. Notice how this grand cosmic symphony now begins to fade, replaced by the soft, immediate reality of your own resting presence. This quiet room is your current sanctuary, a place where the scale of planets gives way to the intimate comfort of your own breath. Surprisingly, the body knows exactly how to transition from the wonders of the stars to the deep, restorative weight of sleep. We begin this final descent at the very base of your being, drawing all awareness down to the tips of your toes. Feel the gentle, heavy weight of your feet as they settle into the fabric, releasing the last remnants of the day's journey. Every small muscle in your ankles now surrenders to the pull of gravity, sinking deeper into the soft support beneath you. Moving upward, the calves and shins become remarkably heavy, as if they are turning into the very stone of a peaceful mountain. This profound stillness continues into the thighs, where the large muscles finally let go of their strength. You are anchored and safe, a quiet monument of rest in a silence that is perfectly still. Deep within the hips and lower back, a wave of warmth begins to spread, melting away any lingering tension. The spine rests like a series of smooth, river-worn stones, perfectly aligned and supported by the bedding. Your torso feels expansive and light, even as the weight of your body sinks further into the mattress. If we were to look closer at the rhythm of your chest, we would see the slow, effortless rise and fall of a life at peace. The shoulders now drop away from the ears, widening and relaxing into total surrender. This softness flows down the arms and into the palms of your hands. The fingers curl naturally and rest without effort, as still as the air in the corners of the room. This quiet room is filled only with the softest shadows and the sound of your own steady, calming breath. Every inhale brings a sense of cool, refreshing clarity, while every exhale releases a heavy, velvety blanket of sleep. The neck and the base of the skull now find their perfect, cushioned alignment, letting go of the need to support anything at all. In the jaw, the teeth part slightly as the tongue rests heavily, clearing away the last of the day's words. The tiny muscles around the eyes and the forehead smooth out completely, like a sheet of silk being drawn over a quiet surface. The eyelids are heavy, so heavy that they feel like a natural part of the peaceful dark surrounding you. This stillness is absolute, a soft and encompassing presence that wraps around you like a familiar embrace. The air you breathe is gentle, cool, and carries only the scent of home and the promise of rest. The weight of the blankets is a warm, protective shell that keeps you safe and sequestered from the noise of the day. Every part of you, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet, is now fully and beautifully asleep. The room is silent, the breath is steady, and the night is yours to enjoy in total restorative peace. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.